Welcome to the Fantasy Audiobook. Marvel's Humanoid Magic Weapon. Chapter 1. New York, USA. A dull thumping sound came from a dark alley. This sound sounds like a strong blow to the flesh. Under the dim street lights, one or two pedestrians occasionally passed by. When they heard these voices, they just quickened their pace in a hurry, obviously without any intention of doing anything heroic. As the sound showed, there were two figures fighting behind the corner. One of the black men was tall and strong, about 2 meters tall, and his iron tower-like body showed great strength. The other person is an Asian mixed race, about 1.8 meters tall. The face is shaped like a knife and an axe, with deep features, black hair and black eyes. In comparison, this Asian man's body looks a bit thin. However, if you occasionally glance at him, you can still see his streamlined muscles under his clothes. It seems that he is not as weak as he appears. At this time, it was this Asian man who had the upper hand. He didn't seem to be in a hurry to resolve the fight, but kept provoking the black man. "Nigger, haven't you eaten?" A nigger doesn't have all his hair, yet he imitates others and robs. "Why are your fists getting softer and softer? Haven't you stopped breastfeeding yet? Do you want me to help you call your mother over so that you can have some milk?" The strong black man heard him say a nigger, and he became furious. He howled and attacked the Asian man desperately. The Asian man did not dodge, and allowed his fists to attack him, and only occasionally fought back once or twice, to stimulate the opponent. Gradually, the black man who was desperately attacking lost his strength, and the Asian man curled his lips. "Okay, I won't play with you anymore, just fall down." As he spoke, he knocked hard on the black man's head. After receiving this blow, the black man immediately rolled his eyes and fell to the ground. The Asian man found the wallet of the fallen black man and turned it over casually. "Another one. You are a poor guy, you don't have $100 in your pocket, no wonder you come out to rob someone. Take out the US dollars, throw the wallet on the ground, and walk out of the alley without looking back." The Asian man's name is Fang Tian. Fang Tian has a secret in his heart. In fact, he is not from this world. He was originally from another Earth. There was no supernatural magic on that Earth, but at least it was much safer than this world. This started from 3 days ago. At that time, Fang Tian was playing a web game and was preparing to refine where is the magic weapon. Unexpectedly, with a click of the mouse, he traveled through time. After understanding it, he found out that this was the Marvel Universe. As for how he knew, he didn't see the masked Spider-Man active in the newspapers or in the gossip news. Tony Stark, a frequent visitor. Fang Tian originally thought that he would live in dire straits from now on, and might be beaten to death by the villain. Fortunately, at the same time, a movie appeared in his mind book of chaos. To practice or not to practice? Do you still need to ask? Of course Fang Tian started practicing immediately. In just one meal, this technique was fully practiced. Fang Tian opened his eyes with a confused look on his face. It seems that he has changed. At this time, he thought that the Chaos Book was a fake product. Until it was time to eat, he ate several large bowls, but he was still not full. Holding the metal rice bowl, the more he looked at it, the more he felt like his mouth was full. Greedy, he unknowingly took a bite. Amidst the clicking sound, he ate the metal rice bowl. When his hand was empty, Fang Kai realized, "What did I do? I actually ate the bowl. What's going on?" In the panic, he knew what was happening in his mind. It turned out that this Chaos Book was the supreme secret method of refining treasures. Now Fang Tian had refined himself into a magic weapon. As for the owner of the magic weapon, of course it is himself. He can only be regarded as the lowest level low-grade mortal weapon now, and only has the instinct to refine all things. In other words, Fang Tian now can survive even if he eats dirt, but who would want to eating dirt? If he wants to improve his strength, he has 3 ways. The first is, of course, to run the Book of Chaos honestly every day. If this continues, one day he will be promoted to a higher level. Maybe in hundreds or thousands of years, naturally, it can become an immortal treasure-level magic weapon. At that time, it will be no different from ordinary immortals. Even the body's defense and attack power will be several times stronger than those of body refiners of the same level. The second method is to use the instinct to refine all things by oneself, to refine and devour various materials. Regardless of the level of the material, it can improve a certain amount of skill, but the degree of improvement is different. In other words, Fang Tian can now choose stones every day, or upgrade, but it's not necessarily how many stones you need to eat. The third and final type is to be beaten. When Fang Tian is attacked, it is equivalent to being tempered, so he can improve his skills. It is best to be sentimental. The attack of a heartless thing will have the best effect. The attack of a heartless thing is also useful, but the effect is only 1% of that of a sentient thing. After understanding the situation, Fang Tian naturally felt relieved. It turned out that his body was fine, and it will get better and better. After thinking about these three methods to improve his power, he did not hesitate to choose a mixture of the second and third methods. That is, using the beating method and the refining method at the same time. Pay equal attention to both. Precious materials may be difficult to obtain, but isn't it easy in this world to get beaten? After learning about the three methods to improve his power, Fang Tian decided that he would provoke others more and fight more in the future. Today's drama happened because of this. After searching for it, Fang Tian didn't rush home. Instead, he found a hardware store first. This hardware store is located in Chinatown, not far from Fang Tian's home. The sign says, Rixing Hardware Store, in both Chinese and English, and it's owned by an old Chinese man. Fang Tian has been here a few times and has become familiar with the old man from Rixing Hardware Store. He was about 60 years old, simple and clean, always smiling, and very kind-hearted. Fang Tian only knew that the old man's surname was Zhang, but he didn't know his specific name, so he just called him Uncle Zhang. Entering the store, Mr. Zhang was wandering around drinking tea. Seeing him coming, he didn't get up and said slowly, "Xiaoshan, what are you buying today?" Fang Tian said, "Let's buy steel nails. Let's get 5 kilograms this time." The old man was a little surprised. "The day before yesterday you only bought 2 kilograms, right, and you used it up so quickly." Fang Tian said, "I bought it for our construction team, not for me alone, so it consumes it faster. If I am the only one, what will happen? I can't use it all." The old man waved his hand. "Forget it, I don't care about you. You also know where the things are, go get them yourself." No matter in his past life or this life, Fang Tian is an orphan. In this life, his predecessor was quite familiar with Mr. Zhang, so he walked in without being polite. A few minutes later, he came back with a bag of steel nails. "This steel nail comes in a box. I weighed it and found it weighed about 5.3 kilograms. The old man said directly, "Okay, I'll wipe out the change for you. Let's count it as 5 kilograms. It's $6 per kilogram. Just give us $30. Fang Tian counted out $30 from his pocket and handed it over. Mr. Zhang he took it casually and put it in the drawer. "The purpose of coming here has been achieved." Fang Tian and Zhang Bo said hello and naturally left. Holding the steel nails in one hand, he took out a box from the bag with the other hand. He opened the box, reached out and took out a steel nail, put it in his mouth and bit it. With a bang, half of the nail was gone. While chewing the nails, Fang Tian nodded with satisfaction. "It tastes good, just like stick biscuits." Yes, he bought so many nails just for eating. After experiments, Fang Tian discovered that different materials have different tastes. The same materials have different tastes depending on the production process. This feeling is almost like cooking. The same ingredients, in the hands of different chefs, will naturally produce different flavors. Like granite, it tastes like dry bread, with crumbs falling off as you eat it. Sandstone looks like broken glass in your mouth and is difficult to swallow. In order to do the experiment, Fang Tian even grabbed a handful of soil and took a taste. As it turned out, the smell was really earthy, and he had to rinse his mouth. After tasting it, Fang Tian concluded some rules. The higher the grade of raw materials in nature, the better the taste. The more carefully processed the same materials, the better the taste. If the parts are rusty or even scrapped, they will have a rotten taste in your mouth. When it comes to eating, do you prefer to eat food with a rotten smell, or do you prefer to eat fresh food? Anyway, Fang Tian prefers fresh food. Therefore, he did not buy some scrap metal to eat, but directly bought brand new things. Among them, steel nails taste good and are easy to obtain, so they have become Fang Tian's first choice. After returning home, Fang Tian put down a bag of steel nails and prepared to cook. Although he can survive eating steel nails, he is still used to eating. Fortunately, his sense of taste is relatively normal in this regard, and the food still tastes the same as it originally tasted. Otherwise, what's the point of living if you can't even eat? After eating, Fang Tian took a box of steel nails as a snack and took stock of his belongings. After counting, he sighed. I only have more than $1,000 left in my body, and there are only $2,000 in my bank card. This is what I got from robbing a few gangsters and robbers in the past few days. However, he just sighed at this time and was not prepared to do anything more. Daily expenses have been able to be maintained with the methods used in recent days. I don't think those robbers would call the police. If they tell the police that they were robbed, they can't even explain it. The point is, it's embarrassing. When these days pass and he becomes stronger, won't he be able to make money by killing a few gangsters and drug dealers at will? With the calculation in his mind, Fang Tian gradually became sleepy. He said to himself, "Go to sleep, we have classes tomorrow." That's right, he was still a student now, in the same school as Spider-Man. The two are even in the same class. Ever since Peter Parker learned that Fang Tian was an orphan, he intentionally got close to each other, and the two have a good relationship. At this time, Peter Parker and Uncle Ben were dead. As a result, he often transforms into Spider-Man to defend justice and fight criminals, and has become famous. Early in the morning, Fang Tian left the house. After arriving at the school classroom, class time has just arrived. Fang Tian's predecessor was an orphan and an Asian. He didn't have many friends in the class. He was also happy with it. Peter Parker hasn't come yet, and it seems he had another sleepless night last night. Talk about Cao Cao. Cao Cao arrives. Teacher Cecil in front was preparing to give a lecture. The classroom door creaked open, and a man tiptoed to return to his seat. It was Parker. Teacher Cecil suddenly slapped the book. "Mr. Parker, you are late again." Peter Parker turned around awkwardly. "In comparison, Ms. Cecil, I will definitely not do it next time." Teacher Cecil persuaded said, "Peter, I know that some regrettable things have happened in your family recently. Because of this, you should work harder instead of being decadent like this. Look at your performance, who is worthy of it?" Peter Parker, I also know that Teacher Cecil is caring about him, but there are some things that are destined to be unspeakable, so I can only continue to promise. Thank you for your concern, I have cheered up. Don't worry, it won't be like this in the future. Yes. Cecil waved his hand, and Parker returned to his seat as if he had received an amnesty. Fang Tianchao. Parker nodded and continued to wander around the world. In front of the blackboard, Teacher Cecil was talking about everything. Under the podium, Fang Tian was in a daze, and Peter Parker was drowsy. The whole morning passed like this. At noon, Fang Tian and Parker went to the cafeteria to eat. I happened to pass by a basketball court where 4 or 5 people were playing together. Not only intentionally or unintentionally, a basketball came straight to Fang Tian's head. Fang Tian turned his head to one side and dodged over. Seeing that the basketball was about to hit Parker at his side, he unexpectedly reached out and grabbed the basketball. Someone on the basketball court shouted, "Hey, monkey over there. Ask your partner to pass the basketball." When Fang Tian heard this, he immediately became angry. Parker was about to stand up for him when Fang Tian reached out and stopped him. "Give me the basketball. Today, I want them to kneel down and call me grandpa." Parker hesitated. You know, both of them were bullied in the past. At that time, Fang Tian had always dared to be angry but dared not speak out. How could he become so brave today? Little did he know that the soul of the person in front of him had changed, and he was no longer that cowardly Asian boy. Seeing Parker not moving, Fang Tian reached for the basketball and said to him, "Don't interfere in today's matter." He was also prepared to receive a beating to loosen his muscles and bones, use the waist, and then teach these fools how to behave. If Parker intervenes, the people in front of him will immediately kneel down, and this plan will be defeated. Holding the basketball and entering the court, Yi Yang asked the basketball in his hand, "Do you want this?" Several people said, "I'm talking about you, little monkey, hurry up and throw the ball over." Fang Tian flew out with a ball and smashed it on one person's balls. "Grandsons, here you go." The man immediately fell to his knees and rolled over while holding his balls. How could he still have the strength to catch the ball? At this moment, Parker on the sidelines subconsciously tightened his legs. The remaining 4 people immediately gathered around. Boy, what was your name just now? Fang Tian. Grandson, do you like to hear it so much? Then I will show mercy and call you a few more times. Grandsons, please call Grandpa quickly. Let me listen. The other party was deliberately provoking, and Fang Tian wanted to fight. Naturally, when dry wood comes into contact with a strong fire, it will catch fire. Several people started fighting. Several people on the other side surrounded him and started punching and kicking each other. Fang Tian occasionally fought back, and they attacked in 3 directions. Those people were getting more and more angry by Fang Tian, and they gradually became ruder and more forceful. From the looks of the situation, the other side had the upper hand due to the large number of people. In fact, those people were suffering terribly. The pain in the places on the body that Fang Tian occasionally hit his bones. The fist hit his opponent, but he didn't notice it, and even seemed to enjoy it. As those few people could see, Fang Tian really enjoyed it. Every time he was hit by a punch, he felt a heat flow into his body, which was extremely comfortable. Those few people were still struggling to hold on, unable to get off the stage. If the surrounding classmates saw the 5 of them being beaten away by an Asian boy, how would they be able to hang out in the future? At this time, a voice like the sound of nature sounded. Stop. With so many people bullying one person, do you have any sense of shame? The 5 people were relieved and quickly backed away. Boy. Look, there is a beautiful woman interceding for you today, we will let you go. After saying this, he turned around and left without caring about anything else. But for some reason, they always walk with their legs spread apart, like crabs. Fang Tian was enjoying being beaten, but he was suddenly stopped and felt a little unhappy. Turning his head to look, his eyes suddenly lit up. The person in front of me has blonde hair, big and lively green eyes, wearing a snow-white shirt and a black skirt, and has a heroic appearance. Just as those people said, she is a beauty. Fang Tian knew this beauty. Wasn't she Gwen Stacy, who was in the same class? Looking at the beauty in front of him, the little dissatisfaction in Fang Tian's heart disappeared. He thanked the beautiful woman. Thank you, classmate Stacy. Gwen Stacy was still a little confused at this time. You're welcome, we are still classmates. I just don't know, are these people today really so easy to talk to? I know they often bully their classmates and are not good people. Fang Tian, why do you care so much? They have already retreated anyway. Gwen Stacy said. That's right, you don't have to be so polite. Call me Gwen. Fang Tian nodded. Then I'm not polite, you can just call me Fang Tian. To thank you, I'll treat you to a meal. It's in the cafeteria, I hope you won't disgust it. Gwen nodded. Since you said so, let's go. Fang Tian called Parker. Gwen then saw Parker next to her and said strangely, Parker, you saw your classmate being bullied and you didn't help. Parker was about to cry but didn't know how to explain it. If Fang Tian himself prevented him from taking action, probably no one would believe it. Seeing this, Fang Tian explained, I told Parker not to take action. Those people discriminated against my skin color. I was so angry that I started fighting with them. I wanted to knock them down alone. Gwen asked with concern. I see you have been hit many times. Are you injured? How about we go to the infirmary to take a look? Fang Tian said. No need, I haven't been injured at all. Just look at it if you don't believe me. As he said it again and again. He lifted his clothes a little, revealing his angular muscles. Gwen took a closer look and found that there were no scars at all. She stretched out her hand and pinched Fang Tian's muscles. I didn't see it, but you are still very strong. Unexpectedly, she was pinched by Gwen's cold little hand. Fang Tian's muscles trembled and he put down his clothes. He smiled awkwardly and said, I do exercise regularly. The atmosphere suddenly became a little ambiguous, and the 3 of them walked into the canteen in silence. It was said that it was Fang Tian's treat, but in fact it was just an ordinary lunch. During the meal, there was another small episode. It turned out that Fang Tian was used to eating steel nails as a snack. After finishing his meal, he took out one and chewed it in his mouth. This scene happened to be seen by Gwen, and she asked in surprise, "What did you eat? Why does it look like a nail?" Fang Tian's thoughts changed and he answered naturally, "It's just chocolate in the shape of a nail, nothing to be surprised about." Hearing this, Gwen lost interest. "So that's it. Today's snacks are also very strange. They come in all shapes. I've even seen ones that look like poop. I don't know who would buy them." Parker's rice. Before they finished eating, they shouted in frustration, "I'm still eating, do you have to discuss this?" Fang Tian and Gwen looked at each other and laughed. The three of them wandered around the campus for a while, then said goodbye to each other and split into two groups. Gwen is together, Fang Tian and Parker are together. It's not that Fang Tian doesn't like beautiful women, it's just that the two of them have just met and it's not suitable to get too entangled. Besides, Fang Tian still had something to ask Parker about. On the way, Fang Tian tentatively asked Parker, "Parker, I heard that you have been familiar with a professor from Osborne Enterprises recently." Parker didn't think there was anything wrong, and this matter was not a secret. "Yes." "Ah, who did you hear that from?" Fang Tian, "I didn't hear that from anyone, but I saw you and the professor going in and out of the Osborne building together." Parker did not raise any suspicion. Yes, the professor was studying a great project recently. The project is almost successful. It seems that at this time, Professor Lizard has not yet experimented with himself, but it will be soon. Fang Tian's goal is Professor Lizard's lizard potion. His refining ability is not just for one kind of material. It can be said that as long as it does not exceed his level range, all materials can be refined. For example, gold, silver, copper, iron, tin, soil, stone, and wood are all within the scope of refining. Of course, if Captain America's shield is in front of him now, with Fang Tian's ability, there is nothing he can do for the time being. The lizard potion can be absorbed by ordinary humans, and presumably it can also be refined by him. In any case, this lizard potion should be able to provide more help than ordinary materials. Thinking like this, he then said to Parker, "Although I am not good at studying, I have always admired this great scientist. Can you take me to visit Dr. Connors's laboratory?" Parker hesitated. He doesn't have many friends in school, Fang Tian is one of them. In particular, both of them were orphans, which made him subconsciously feel closer to each other, so he did not reject them directly. He said hesitantly, "I can't make the final decision about the doctor's laboratory. I will ask the doctor to see what he means." Fang Tian was already very satisfied with this effect, and he did not expect Parker to do it. Agreed. In fact, it is no secret that the doctor has been conducting experiments on limb regeneration. Otherwise, he wouldn't have said it openly in front of a group of interns. Fang Tian thanked Parker repeatedly. Parker waved his hand. "This is nothing. I will tell you the result tomorrow." That night, Fang Tian went out again. By coincidence, not far away, I saw 7 or 8 gangsters with gangster looks on their faces and jingling sounds all over their bodies. Fang Tian followed with interest. These 7 or 8 people looked like they were not kind-hearted people. They swayed left and right as they walked on the road. Pedestrians they met on the way avoided each other, and no one wanted to conflict with them. As the group moved forward, the surrounding environment became more and more familiar. Fang Tian turned around and looked a little surprised. "Isn't this the area where Mr. Yang's Nico hardware store is located?" It's not far from his home. After going around in a circle, he came back again. "Don't tell me, the destination of these people is really Mr. Zhang." In the Rixing hardware store, Uncle Zhang was leisurely looking at the chess records. 7 or 8 figures gathered around, blocking the light. He raised his eyes and was unmoved. "You guys are here, what's the matter?" The leader said fiercely, "Old man, don't be pretentious here. This whole street, only the rest your family hasn't paid the protection fee, so you'd better be wiser." Zhang Bo said, "This has always been the territory of the Longxing Society. When did it come under your control?" The leader looked impatient. "Old man, what you said is it happened in what month and year? The gang of Longxing Wei were defeated by our Hell Gang long ago and have been disbanded. Now this place is under our control." People around them shouted, "If you don't obey, obey from now on, just lie on that chair and don't even think about standing up." Uncle Zhang, who seemed harmless to humans and animals, had a flash in his eyes. So, you guys want to break the old man's legs today? The gangster leader. If you don't know what's going on, that will be your fate. Hearing this, Uncle Jong tensed up and was about to stand up. At this moment, a loud shout came from outside the store, "Stop!" Several people in the store turned around and saw a thin man of 18 or 19 years old. This man is Fang Tian. He didn't see Mr. Yang's movements, only saw 7 or 8 figures surrounding Mr. Zhang. He was afraid that he would be harmed, so he hurried over and caught up just in time. When those people turned around and saw Fang Tian's thin figure, they immediately laughed at him. "You don't even have hair on your head, you still want to meddle in other people's business." Ha 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 ha, it made me laugh so hard. Who do you think you are? There was a burst of laughter from all around. Fang Tian was unmoved. He just swayed and was in front of the leader in a blink of an eye, and kicked him between his legs. The gangster leader's eyes almost bulged out, laughing. The sound stopped, and he rolled around with his crotch in his arms. The store suddenly became quiet, and Mr. Zhang relaxed his body, lying comfortably on the rocking chair again, and started watching the show. After a few seconds, one of them reacted, "You're looking for death, how dare you make a sneak attack? Brothers, let him see how powerful we are." While shouting, the 7 people rushed over together. Fang Tian did not dodge or avoid, letting the fist fall on him. He didn't even care about being hit several times. There is no weakness in him. His whole body up and down, even the eyes, balls, and defense were on par with other places. There was no difference. Being beaten by 7 or 8 people together, Fang Tian only felt waves of small heat, which continued to spread from the place where he was hit. Integrated into the body. Gradually, his gratitude seemed to have reached the limit, and he only needed a little more help to break through. He couldn't help but intensify. And kept saying, "You weaklings, haven't you eaten? Why does it feel like being tickled when you hit me with your fist?" As he said that, he grabbed a person and slapped him hard. These people are the most concerned about face. How can they endure being slapped in the face? At that moment, I really used all my strength to suck milk. Even at the beginning, the gangster leader, who was kicked in the balls, stood up tremblingly and gave Fang Tian 2 hard kicks. Even so, Fang Tian still felt that it was not enough, just a little bit, but that point was like a chasm. The gangster leader looked at him. He had no intention of falling down, and his face was fierce. He twitched a short knife from his waist and stabbed him several times. Fang Tian felt a pain on his back, as if a layer of oily skin had been broken. These few knives really stopped him. It became the last straw that broke the camel's back. The thin barrier was quickly washed away by the heat. Fang Tian immediately felt the difference. His body was much stronger, his defense was improved, and his 5 senses were also somewhat strengthened. Originally, he was beaten by the fist. When he was hit on his body, he still felt a slight pain, but now, it was like itching. Even when a knife was poked on his body, he felt no pain, and even a layer of oily skin could not be scratched. Fang Tian felt the changes in himself, extremely excited. Now, he is still at the lowest level, still a mortal weapon, but he has broken through from low level to mid-level. The change is so big that he is already considered invulnerable. Then in the future, he will break through to magic weapons, fairy weapons, etc. How powerful is the innate spiritual treasure? It seems that in the future, you will have enough capital to survive in this dangerous Marvel world, and your life will become more and more nourishing. Ignoring the few people who were still surrounding him and trying their best to attack, Fang Tian felt his body that was like a new baby and smiled with satisfaction. Then he punched the young gangster in front of him in the face, and there was a sound of broken nose bones. The young gangster had already fallen to the ground and fainted. A divine dragon swung its tail and put it on another person's chest. With a clicking sound, another person jumped to the ground. The leader's teeth chattered. "Are you a mutant?" He stabbed Fang Tian several times, but Fang Tian was still alive and well. He couldn't think of any reason other than being a mutant. Fang Tian tilted his head. "Mutant? What is that?" He kept moving, and in a blink of an eye, only Fang Tian and the gangster leader were left standing in the store. Among the remaining 7 people, the one with the least serious injuries was the first one to lie down, with only a broken nose bone. Others have either broken arms or legs. Ignoring these people, Fang Tian first said hello to Mr. Zhang. Uncle Zhang, are you not injured? Mr. Zhang became energetic at this time, looking around Fang Tian and marveling. It doesn't look like you have practiced martial arts. Why are you so skilled? Fang Tian was a little puzzled. It's already this time, and this is what you care about. Mr. Zhang waved his hand. If I don't care about this, do I still care about the loser lying on the ground? What's there to see in something that can be brought down with one hand? Fang Tian listened to his tone, as if Mr. Zhang had also practiced. After knowing him for so long, why didn't he know that he was hiding all his secrets? He couldn't help but ask. It seems that Mr. Zhang, you also have special skills. I don't want to, but Uncle Zhang suddenly stretched out his hand and pinched and shook Fang Tian. Under this pinch and shake, he felt numb in half of his body, and a thin stream of heat oozed from all over his body, which was a few times worse than when he was poked just now. The sword was even more obvious. Mr. Yang's eyes were shining at this time. He is indeed born with supernatural powers. He is a martial arts wizard who has not been seen in a century. Boy, do you want to practice martial arts with me? Fang Tian couldn't laugh or cry after hearing these familiar words. Uncle Zhang, do you still have the 9 Yin Sutra, the 9 Yang magic power, and the Tathagata divine palm in your arms? Mr. Zhang was dissatisfied. What nonsense, what I have here are all secret skills passed down from generation to generation. With deep kung fu and practicing the qi, the power is extremely powerful, which is not what you can compare with your natural power now. Fang Tian also believes this. The Marvel universe is originally a hodgepodge. It has all kinds of powers, and there are indeed heroes who rely on qi to fight. However, Fang Tian does not need this thing. It is not that he is looking down on him. He is now walking in the world. As long as we keep walking on a broad road, there is no need to practice kung fu halfway. Therefore, we had to reject Zhang Bo's kindness. Mr. Zhang did not bother, but it was a pity. With your qualifications, if you practice martial arts, your achievements will definitely be it's very high, but if you don't want to, forget it. While talking, he lay back on the rocking chair without interest. Fang Tian said, those little gangsters on the ground. Mr. Fang interfaced. You don't have to worry about what happened in my store. Just call the police and leave. I'll take care of the rest. Knowing that the old man was not an ordinary person, Fang Tian felt relieved and called the police. He called the police and walked out with the leader of the gang, who was too scared to move. He found a remote alley and threw him on the ground casually. What's your name? He didn't dare not answer. My name is Gresham, sir, just call me Gray. Fang Tian. Gray. I heard that you still have a gang. After hearing Fang Tian's words, Gray's back seemed to straighten a little. Yes, I am a member of the Hell Gang, and the surrounding area is the territory of our Hell Gang. It seems that your gang is quite powerful. So, tell me, where is your stronghold? As he spoke, he took out a steel nail again and again, and in front of him, he forced the steel nail into the concrete floor with his fingers. Looking at the scene in front of him, Gray's waist softened again, and he nodded and bowed. Boss, I can't tell clearly at the moment, I'll take you there right now. The other party nodded with satisfaction. You know what's going on. Let's go and lead the way. At that moment, the two of them walked out of the alley one after another and walked into the distance. As they walked, Gray said curiously, Boss, I wonder what you have to do with our gang. Fang Tian glanced at him. I happen to be relatively poor recently, so I asked your boss to borrow some money to spend my time. When Gray heard this, his legs became weak and he couldn't walk. He thought that Fang Tian was talking to their gang to discuss something, but he didn't expect that Fang Tian was so direct. He asked the gang to borrow money, but it seemed that he still couldn't. Ready to return, isn't this asking for death? Gray begged, Boss, please let me live. If anyone knows about the path I led for the boss, I will shed my skin even if I don't die. Fang Tian smiled half smilingly. Would you choose to peel off the skin now or possibly peel off the skin in the future? What's there to say? Gray immediately shut up and took the initiative to lead the way. The two of them arrived at the place quickly. Gray nodded and bowed in begging, not wanting to go in. He found a way to improve his skills again. Fang Tian was in a good mood and waved his hand, go away. He turned around to escape, but Fang Tian raised his leg and kicked him. Didn't you hear me clearly? I told you to go away. Gray was bitter. Face, thinking about what would happen if he entered the door, he still lay on the ground and rolled away. The people around them found it funny, looking at the two people and pointing. Fang Tian ignored the passers-by and walked to the door. This is a strip club, and there are two strong men at the door, who must be security guards. Without saying a word, Fang Tian punched one of them to the ground. Seeing that he was coming with bad intentions, the other man took out his baton from his waist and whipped it out. Fang Tian did not dodge, and the baton hit him directly on the head. With another kick, the security guard was kicked up, smashed through the ballroom door, and rolled in. Fang Tian stepped in and shouted, "It's irrelevant, get out of here. Grandpa is here to cause trouble." The ballroom was originally in chaos. People rubbing against each other, dancing, and drinking all stopped after hearing the thunderous drinking. For a while, no one came out. After all, there was only Fang Tian at the door, so what trouble could he cause? In less than half a minute, several people watching the scene gathered around. "Boy, you are looking in the wrong place. Fang Tian, are you the fools of the Hell Gang?" Upon hearing this, several people became furious. "Brothers, call me. If you don't let him go out lying down today, I'll write my name backwards." There was a scuffle, and Fang Tian hit the last person on the stereo, and the stereo immediately fell apart, making a harsh roar and losing its sound. Fang Tian glanced at the people around him. "Why, do you want to join in too? Those people were just here to have fun, how could they be willing to be involved in a gang war?" Hearing this, he rushed out like a flood. The employees of Tuliu Dance Hall shouted, "Hey, you haven't paid the bill yet, why are you leaving?" But how could they stop so many people? In the blink of an eye, only a few people from the Hell Gang and Fang Tian were left here. Seeing that the people from the Hell Gang had not gathered yet, Fang Tian sat down with a stern voice and said, "Bartender, bring me a glass of wine, the strongest one." He then said to several members of the Hell Gang, "Hurry up and call someone, otherwise, this place is ruined." Soon, the bartender brought over a cocktail that looked like black tea. The introduction said, "Long Island iced tea is made from vodka, rum, gin, and tequila as the base liquor, plus other raw materials." Fang Tian had heard of the name of Long Island iced tea, but had never tasted it. He reached out and took it, taking a sip. He didn't know if it was because of his health, but when he drank the strong wine, it tasted a bit like black tea. After all, it's not surprising that he now tastes biscuits when eating steel nails, and tastes like black tea when drinking spirits. At the same time, after the wine was refined, a trace of undetectable heat flow was produced and integrated into the body. Fang Tianjun became interested and downed the large cocktail in one gulp. After savoring it carefully, I sighed with emotion. It is indeed a chaos book that claims to be able to refine all things. It can refine anything I eat. It seems that my thinking was limited before. If I can find more materials, maybe I can refine it. The transformation method can improve one's skill faster than the beating method. At this time, more people were surrounding Fang Tian. Fang Tian turned a blind eye to these people. "Bartender, please have a few more drinks." As he slowly tasted the wine, more and more people were around him. After Fang Tian finished 8 glasses of wine, the boss of the Hell Gang finally showed up. This boss is not as vicious as imagined. After appearing, Fang Tian smiled. "Brother, please introduce yourself." "I am the owner of this dance hall, Wolf. I don't know where I have offended you, brother." Fang Tian originally wanted to provoke, but of course he didn't say anything. "Wei Rongqing, why have you provoked me? For me, everyone here is rubbish. Just living in this world has offended me." Wolf's anger rose, but he still suppressed it. "Mister, it's unreasonable to say this." Fang Tian picked up the wine glass and poured the wine directly on the boss's face. "I didn't expect that the legendary boss of the Hell Gang turned out to be a coward. Being provoked like this, Fodu there is fire, not to mention Wolf, a gangster." He heard him shout loudly, seeking death. Dozens of people surrounded him. Fang Tian's face showed excitement. "I thought you were all weaklings, but now it seems that I was right. You are indeed all weaklings. Who can bear this when everyone hears this?" Without the boss's orders, he pulled out his sword, gun, and stick, and beat him head to head. This is what Fang Tian wants. Look at this, today's results will be more than all the previous results combined. Before he could stop smiling, Several steel knives struck him. Fang Tian did not dodge and allowed them to attack. He kept saying, "You are all weaklings and weak. It seems that you need Grandpa to teach you how to hit people today." A straight punch hit one person in the face. The man didn't even hum, flew out and fell to the ground unconscious. For Fang Tian now, all moves are useless. The reason why we need moves is that we need to block and dodge other people's attacks while also allowing ourselves to attack others. What Fang Tian wants is how to dodge when someone attacks him. As for the technique of exerting force, Fang Tian used punches and kicks at will, and the amount of force he exerted was as he pleased, and the weight was at his ease. This is his instinct after he has trained himself into a magic weapon, and there is no need for practice. Therefore, I saw Fang Tian running rampant in the crowd, throwing straight punches, uppercuts, and split punches at will, as if he was in a no-man's land. It was also because he didn't want to end the fight too early and controlled his strength. The person who was hit was in unbearable pain, but was not seriously injured. After lying on the ground for a while, he rejoined the battle group. After a long time, all the people were so tired that their faces turned pale, and some of them could not even hold their weapons steady. All the people were bruised and swollen, and no one was intact. However, Fang Tian became more energetic and happy the more he played. Can you be unhappy? This beating even improved his skill at this stage by less than half. As long as there are a few more fights, the distance to the first level is not far away. After reaching the first level of high grade, if you get Professor Lizard's lizard potion, you might be able to upgrade to the second level. The second level is already regarded as the magic weapon level. It is much stronger than the body refining monks in the foundation building stage, and it can also obtain some powers that ordinary people do not have. Thinking of the joy, he almost laughed out loud. The dozens of people around finally lost their fighting spirit, stopped, and gathered around Fang Tian. Fang Tian continued to provoke. "You trash, why aren't you moving? Did someone pop your anus last night and lose your strength?" Fang Tian continued to provoke, but this time these people turned a deaf ear. The scene just now is still vivid in my mind. They ignored the other party's attacks and seemed to be enjoying it. However, they couldn't bear the other party's attacks. How could they fight this fight? Seeing these people not moving, Fang Tian was also a little uninterested. He was feeling comfortable being beaten, but these people were so soft-hearted, which was really unpleasant. Fang Tian looked around at the people around him. "Where's your boss? We can talk now." At this time, the voice of the boss wolf rang from outside the door. "Boy, you are about to die, and you don't know it yet." Fang Tian took a closer look and saw that wolf was leading a dozen people, each holding a mini submachine gun. Fang Tian was not surprised but overjoyed. Okay, he is indeed a good grandson. He knew that Grandpa was in need and immediately called for reinforcements. Wolf's face turned red. "I don't know whether to live or die. I didn't want to use firearms at first, but now, you just go to hell." He gestured, and gunshots rang out densely. These dozen micro-rams were all equipped with silencers, but continuous firing still made bursts of noise. Fang Tian didn't know if he could resist the gun at this time, so he turned over and hid behind the bar. Listening intently to the sound of the gunshot, he suddenly stretched out a hand. Just then a bullet was fired, and there was a clang. The bullet seemed to hit steel instead of a human hand. Fang Tian drew back his hand and saw that there was only a trace of blood seeping out, nothing serious. Seeing this, he was immediately relieved. At this time, in the ballroom, broken wood was flying, glass was shooting, and all the furniture was sieved by bullets. Fang Tian casually picked up a bullet, threw it into his mouth, and tasted it. His eyes lit up. "This bullet tastes good, a bit like sandwich biscuits, much better than steel nails. From now on, the recipe will be replaced by bullets." At this time, the gunfire stopped, and Wolf shouted again, "Boy, who is the coward now?" Fang Tian concentrated on tasting the bullets and almost forgot about this person. Hearing this, his head popped up. "Grandson, when did you start talking nonsense again?" "Oh, this is my fault, mainly because I didn't teach you well when you were a child." As he spoke, he patted his forehead, looking very remorseful. Wolf's face turned blue and white and blue again. Without saying a word, he grabbed a micro-punch and fired at him. Knowing the power of bullets, Fang Tian had confidence in his heart, so he did not dodge this time and walked straight over. As he walked, he said, "Don't let me get close. When I get close, I will beat your heads into rotten watermelons one by one." The bullet hit his body, and the fire was everywhere. Although he couldn't be seriously injured, he still felt a little pain. What's more, dozens of bullets hit his body every second, and the impact knocked Fang Tian back. At this moment, Fang Tian was in pain and happiness. Every second, he felt that his skills were improving and his strength was gradually increasing. Gradually, Fang Tian stood firm, and he was able to withstand the impact of the bullet. He was not in a hurry to go over and beat those people to death. It would be easy to beat them to death, but if they were dead, who would beat him? While taking bullets, Fang Tian shouted, "It feels so good, give me more." Grandpa caught the gift from the grandchildren. The firepower gradually weakened, probably because there were no bullets. Fang Tian was a little disappointed, stepped forward, and slapped the man in front of him on the head into a rotten watermelon. With brains splattering everywhere, he shook off the blood on his hands and walked up to Wolf. "Now, can we talk?" Wolf was overjoyed. "Grandpa, what you say is what you say." He thought he was going to die, but he didn't expect that there was still a chance to speak, so why not be overjoyed? Hearing Fang Tian call himself Grandpa, he started shouting. "Compared to life, what does calling me Grandpa mean?" Fang Tian nodded with satisfaction. "My dear grandson, do you still have any weapons there?" Wolf hesitated. "There are plenty of weapons. A microcharger only costs a few $100s. I wonder what use you have, Grandpa." Fang Tian Tiandao. "Don't worry so much, take me to the place where you store weapons." Wolf got up and started to lead the way. Fang Tian, "Follow the person who shot just now." Those people looked at each other, but they didn't dare to move. The weapons of the Hell Gang are stored in the basement. There are many guns and ammunition, but there are no heavy weapons. They are just a small gang, they don't need rocket launchers or heavy machine guns. Fang Hua picked up a pistol and gestured with interest. In his previous life, he lived in a dynasty with strict gun control and had never played with guns. It's a pity that for Fang Hua now, the pistol is not as effective as his casual punch. Even so, he put the pistol away. "It's not bad as a toy, isn't it?" Seeing him put away the pistol, the people around him relaxed. They were on tenterhooks just now, fearing that Fang Tian would kill them with a casual shot. Fang Tian said to the people around him, "Pick up the gun and load the bullets." For a long time, no one dared to move. Fang Tian was a little impatient, and his voice became cold. "Didn't you hear? Pick up the gun." Seeing that Fang Tian's expression was wrong, these people quickly picked up the gun and loaded the bullets. Fang Tian stood far away. "Come, shoot me." Those people hesitated, not knowing whether they should obey his order. Fang Tian became more and more impatient, took out the pistol from his waist, and randomly selected someone. A shot was fired, hitting the forehead accurately. There was a charred round hole on the man's forehead, and he fell down and died with his eyes open. Either you shoot or I shoot, it's that simple. A few people finally did not dare to hesitate, picked up their guns and started shooting. Although I don't know if this person took the wrong medicine and had a masochistic tendency. But now, the most important thing is to save his own life. Fang Tian rested comfortably on the wall. I felt a slight increase in my skill, and I was extremely satisfied. That night, the gunshots in the basement continued until the second half of the night. Until all the bullets were fired, the arms of those people were bruised and swollen by the recoil. He couldn't even lift it up, so Fang Tian was satisfied. Amidst the hail of bullets, he had already broken through to the upper level of mortal weapons. As long as he rose to another level, he would be considered a transcendent mortal. By then, he would also be able to obtain some transcendent mortal weapons. Ability. I came out this night and gained a lot. I was upgraded to 2 levels in a row. Therefore, Fang Tian was in a good mood and stopped arguing with these people. He said slowly, "Seeing that you are obedient today, Grandpa, I will let you go. In the future, I will come back when I have time. Remember to prepare more bullets. By the way, there is one more thing before I leave. Grandpa and I are short of money now. As a good grandson, Wolf, shouldn't you be more filial?" As he spoke, he rubbed his fingers. Wolf's face was full of pain, and he forced a smile from his face. It should. As he said that, he went to another room, opened the safe, took out all the cash and put it into the suitcase. Fang Tian took the suitcase and staggered out regardless of the reactions of those people. When he reached the basement door before, he wanted to test his strength and hit the iron door casually. The iron door was supposed to open inward, but Fang Tian blasted outward, forcefully blowing away the iron door and its frame, smashing it open. He bought a few tables and chairs. However, the outside was already in tatters, and he didn't care about a few more tables. All the gang members from the Hell Gang outside had already run away. Fang Tian didn't care about this and went home directly. In the basement, 10 people, the shooting boys and Wolf, looked at each other in confusion. One of the boys asked, "What should we do?" Wolf slapped the table hard, but he gasped in pain. His hands were still bruised and swollen. This person was so deceitful that he even said he would come again in the future. Does he think that, as a mutant, he is invincible? Next time he comes, I will give him a big surprise. The younger brother flattered him continuously. Of course the boss is not afraid of him. I wonder how we are going to deal with him. This monster probably took tens of thousands of bullets today, but it seemed like he was enjoying it. Wolf said with a cruel smile, "I know a mutant who specializes in restraining other mutants. We invited this mutant here. As long as this person comes again, he will be dead." Suddenly a younger brother interrupted Wolf, "But boss, if we don't go to the hospital, our hands might be useless." After a moment of panic, the group of people drove to the hospital. Fang Tian didn't know that something happened after he left. If he knew about Wolf, he would have to laugh out loud. He is not a mutant. No matter how hard that person suppresses the mutants, what can he do to him? Early the next morning, Parker excitedly told Fang Tian that Dr. Connors had agreed and could take him to visit Boster's laboratory today. It turned out that Dr. Connors had already injected the lizard medicine into Fred, a mouse with a broken leg. Now that the experiment has been successful, Fred has grown full forelimbs. He was looking for someone to share the joy of success. Besides, the key formula of the decay algorithm was provided by Parker. He couldn't refuse Parker's small request, so he agreed. That afternoon, Fang Tian and Parker came to the Osborne building together. Dr. Connors took the two of them into his laboratory. The first thing that comes into view are various instruments that are of unknown power. Fang Tian knew nothing about this, but he still pretended to be amazed. On the way, Fang Tian also saw the canary equipment. Seeing that Fang Tian was very interested in this device, Dr. Connors introduced, "This is the canary device. You only need to load it with an antigen, and it can create a medicinal mist that covers the whole city. The theory is it can cure a certain disease in the whole city in one day." Fang Tian praised, "What a sophisticated equipment, and its effect is great." After visiting the laboratory, Dr. Connors took the two of them to his office. "When I first entered the office, the first thing I saw was a large sheet of formulas on the whiteboard and several bookshelves full of books." Dr. Connors brought Fang Tian to his desk, pointed to a mouse in a transparent cage, and said, "Let me introduce, this is Fred." Fang Tian, "I heard Parker mention it. I heard that a few days ago before, Fred only had 3 legs, one of which was disabled." Dr. Connors said proudly, "That's exactly what the lizard potion I developed is, it can regenerate a broken limb. Think about it, how many human beings can this medicine benefit?" Fang Tian praised, "It's really great. I know that I am not a smart person and have no talent in this area. But it is precisely because of this that I admire people like you, Professor." "Thank you, Doctor. You can let me visit." After visiting Professor Lizard's office and laboratory, Fang Tian returned happily. Of course, his purpose was not just to visit. He came today mainly to understand the location of Professor Lizard's office and to make plans for the future. I remember that in the movie of the previous life, after the mouse Fred broke his leg and regenerated, not long after, Dr. Connors was forced by Dr. Rasha to conduct human experiments. In the end, Dr. Lizard was forced to inject medicine into his body and transformed into a humanoid lizard to hunt down Dr. Rasha. This is the day Fang Tian has been waiting for. At that time, when Dr. Lizard comes out, he can invade the Osborne building, make a time difference, and steal the lizard potion. Test these potions first to see how they work. If the effect is good, there will be another opportunity after this, that is, Dr. Lizard will go to the school to cause a scene in order to hunt down Spider-Man. After this big fuss, Fang Tian was also able to track Dr. Lizard and reach his lair in the sewers. In the sewers, you can get a lot of lizard potions. Finally, you can have a few battles with Professor Lizard to increase your skills and accomplish more with one stone. This is Fang Tian's plan. In the next few days, Fang Tian took a leave of absence from school and didn't even attend classes. He just watched outside the Osborne building. Sure enough, the next night, Fang Tian saw Dr. Connors stumbling out of the Osborne building. At this time, Dr. Connors can already be called Professor Lizard. Because he has grown another hand, some scales can still be faintly seen on the cheeks. Fang Tian walked to a deserted place and put on the lizard suit he had prepared in advance. It's actually just a lizard hood, a lizard tail, and clothes covered in scales. Although the flaw is huge, in the darkness and with the quick actions, whenever Professor Lizard shows up in the future, he will naturally be blamed for this. After being prepared, Fang Tian stood outside the wall of Osborne Tower and punched out. There was a bang, and a big hole was broken in the wall. The security guards are mostly at the front door, so how can they be prepared for someone to suddenly break through the wall? The green shadow flashed, and apart from the big hole in the wall, Fang Tian's figure was gone. The piercing alarm sounded, and hundreds of security personnel on each floor took action. Fang Tian used his fastest speed to destroy all the lights on the scene. Hundreds of security personnel and staff were in a mess, shouting and shouting to find the intruder, but under the dark lights, the building was in chaos. Where could the security personnel take action for a moment? Fang Tian didn't bother with the security personnel. His purpose was not to kill people, but to steal things. He dodged and ran towards the laboratory. Smash the door when you encounter it, smash the wall when you encounter it, and move forward in a straight line. Occasionally, he encountered security guards. Most of these security guards were equipped with pistols. Shooting Fang Tian was almost like tickling him. He simply ignored these attacks. Soon, we arrived at the laboratory. After searching for a while, I only saw the lizard potion marked as a failed product. Look at these failures. Fang Tian had an idea. I don't want to become a lizard. What's the difference between failed products and successful products to me? Anyway, as soon as I eat them, they are refined and taken away. He took the failed products and asked the lizard again. Break into the professor's office. With his power, no one can stop these ordinary people. Now was the time to rush, and Fang Tian had no intention of getting entangled with those people, so he just ignored the bullets hitting him and moved forward in a straight line. The laboratory and Professor Lizard's office were very close, and they were there in the blink of an eye. As soon as he entered the office, Fang Tian immediately saw the lizard potion on the desk. This potion should be the few remaining after being injected by Professor Lizard. Fang Tian was still not sure whether the lizard potion would be useful to him. He just wanted to grab a few and test it out this time. Therefore, I am not disappointed when I see these few potions. Take the potion, this time the purpose has been achieved. He showed no regrets and turned around to leave. Before leaving the office, Fang Tian's ears twitched and he stopped. He repeated his old trick, first using pebbles to blow out all the lights in the house and corridor, and the area immediately became dark. It turned out that he heard the sound of security personnel outside. Hundreds of security personnel in the entire building had surrounded him from a distance, forming a circle of encirclement. What Fang Tian was afraid of was not that he couldn't break through this man's encirclement, but that his crude disguise would be exposed. Now he is not strong enough to ignore everything. It would be better for Professor Lizard to take the blame for this. After getting ready, Fang Tian hid behind the wall and waited with bated breath. There were many people outside the office door, but it was quiet. Everyone moved lightly and held their breath for fear of being discovered by the enemies in the room. Little did they know that their footsteps had already been heard by Fang Tian, and all this was in vain. Outside the door, two strong men were holding a handheld door-breaking hammer, and the other man was making gestures and giving orders. Silently, the conductor retracted his 3 fingers one after another. 3, 2, 1. He waved his hand, and the 2 men holding the door-breaking hammer used all their strength to break the office door with one impact. In the office, except for the echo of the sound of the door being broken, there was dead silence. The gun-toting security personnel looked at each other, and the person in command made a gesture. There was a crisp sound, and a flash bomb rolled in. Fang Tian's eyes lit up. What a great opportunity. A figure faster than a cheetah jumped out and arrived in front of the still-rolling flash bomb. With a gentle wave of his hand, the flash bomb flew back. Although the low-light night vision devices equipped by these people have over-brightness protection functions, when they saw the flash bombs flying back, they still closed their eyes reflexively. This is what Fang Tian wants. Flash bombs emit a dazzling white light that can make ordinary people temporarily blind and shed tears if looked directly at it. But Fang Tian couldn't have the slightest impact. In a blinding flash of light, he rushed into the crowd. Punch the person in front of you in the chest. He was wearing a bulletproof vest, but it had no effect. It was like being hit by a cannonball. He flew out on the spot, knocking a crack out of the wall behind him, and stayed embedded in the wall for a long time before sliding down. When Fang Tian approached these people, he was like a tiger entering a flock of sheep, and no one was his enemy. As long as someone is touched by his hands and feet, his muscles and bones will be broken immediately, and no one can stand up again. In just 10 seconds, before anyone had time to shoot, all the 20 people in front of them were already lying down. Wiping off the blood on his fist, Fang Tian sneered and walked away. After dozens of seconds, people from other directions felt something was wrong and gathered over. There were more and more people around. Looking at the 20-odd people lying on the ground moaning, they looked at each other and started talking. No one wanted to pursue them. I'm afraid the person who invaded the building is not a human being. It really doesn't look like a human being. I also saw that he has a tail. It's green all over, like a lizard. So powerful and so fast. Even if we catch up, it will only be to deliver food. The man lying on the ground listened to the discussion of his companions and cursed. Fool, help us up. Didn't you see that we were injured and you want us to die here? Only then did the people around him react, stop to marvel, and hurriedly rescue their companions. After these people on the ground were sent to the hospital, the doctor thought they had all been smashed. Fang Tian easily escaped from the siege. Leaving the Osborne building, the journey went smoothly without anyone intercepting him. It seemed that those people were frightened by him. Looking at the time, Fang Tian ran as fast as he could towards the Williamsburg Bridge. This bridge is the bridge where Dr. Lizard first appeared. Fang Tian forced his way into the Osborne building, obtained the lizard potion, and then broke through the siege. This series of actions took only 10 minutes. Fang Tian took action immediately after seeing Dr. Connors walking out of the building. Only such a short time had passed. At this time, Professor Lizard was probably still taking a taxi and had not reached the Williamsburg Bridge. As long as Fang Tian arrives before Dr. Lizard will appear next, plus the lizard suit on him. Then the scapegoat doctor is so firmly on his back that he can't even take it off. Even if the doctor knew that someone else was setting the blame on him, who would believe his explanation? When we arrived at the Williamsburg Bridge, the scene was still harmonious, and indeed Dr. Lizard had not appeared yet. Fang Tian took off his suit, found a place, destroyed the body of the lizard suit, turned around and left, going home. He cannot appear here today, otherwise, it will arouse suspicion in vain. Fang Tian robbed something, put the blame on someone else, and went home in style. What he didn't see was that after he turned around and left, Professor Lizard arrived at the scene and had a big fight with Spider-Man, who followed, and finally retreated because the drug's power wore off. Spider-Man also did not pursue because he needed to rescue the crowd. When Dr. Connors returned to Osborne Tower, he was dumbfounded by the scene in front of him. What's the situation? He was just out for a trip. Why were there so many big holes in the outer wall of the building? Is there a passage leading directly to the laboratory? Dr. Connors felt something bad and hurried back to his office. Sure enough, the office was in a mess, and several potions on the table were missing. This time, he was very angry. Being messed with like this, he didn't know how much more work it would take to complete his plan. However, he was also a little strange in his heart. Looking at the traces left in the Osborne building, this person may not be much weaker than him who transformed into a lizard. What is the use of such a person in grabbing the lizard potion? The doctor, who had been affected by the lizard's cold-blooded gene, thought with some pride, could such a powerful person also think that the lizard's body is more perfect? Fang Tian returned home, took out all the potions and placed them on the table. There were only 3 finished potions, but there were quite a few failed ones, a total of 12. After hesitating for a moment, Fang Tian picked up a finished potion and drank it. In fact, the lizard potion was originally for injection, but here, as long as it enters the body, everything will be refined, so it doesn't matter. As soon as the medicine is taken, the effect is immediate. Fang Tian felt a huge wave of heat emanating from his belly and gradually integrating into his body. A mere potion increased his power by 1/10. He probably felt that as long as he had 10 more potions, he would be able to upgrade. It really works, and it's not in vain that I planned this. Fang Tian was also a little excited at this time. At his current level, if he wanted to upgrade to the magic weapon level, if he was just refining high-quality steel, about 50 tons would be enough. It is not difficult to get 50 tons of steel. The most important thing is that if you want to refine something now, it must be in the body. In other words, at this stage, it needs to be injected or eaten. When will he eat 50 tons of steel? That's why he will think of another idea, take the initiative to get beaten, or find some rare and precious materials. Lizard potion can also be regarded as a kind of rare material. One finished product is worth 5 tons of high-quality steel. Without saying anything, use the remaining potion, drink them all. 12 potions of the failed product are only worth 2 of the finished products. In other words, he still needs 5 lizard potions now. Or, like he did a few days ago, take more bullets, maybe 7 or 8 times, and then. That's almost it. If this continues, ordinary people's attacks will have less and less effect, and they will need to find those with strong strength to provoke them. Thinking like this, Fang Tian fell asleep in a daze. Before falling asleep, suddenly an idea came to him. Isn't there a powerful person beside him? Spider-Man Peter Parker, isn't he a good target? The next day, Fang Tian arrived at school early. These days, he planned to stay at school. Honestly, it would be embarrassing for the provincial lizard professor to come to school, but he was not there. He thought carefully about his thoughts before going to bed last night. Finally, he decided that it could be done. Of course, he would not be with Spider-Man. Tell the truth, but prepare to make up another lie. He is already preparing to fight with Professor Lizard, and his identity will inevitably be exposed by then. It is better to improve his strength before that. The matter is settled like this. In the restaurant, Fang Tian was about to say something when the report on TV caught his attention. What was being replayed on TV was the police press conference. Fang Tian knew the person in front of the camera. It was Gwen's father, Director George. Director George. At about 9 o'clock last night, the incident that occurred at Osborne Enterprises and the Williamsburg Bridge caused multiple injuries and significant property damage, and was of a vile nature. Our police are fully investigating and now have some clues. Based on the testimony of some eyewitnesses and our preliminary investigation, there was a person at the scene of the accident. So now, I'm going to issue a warrant. We're going to bring Spider-Man to justice. After reading this report, Parker looked a little unhappy. Fang Tian said, "Parker, have you noticed Spider-Man recently?" Parker frowned. "Do you think Spider-Man is a criminal?" Fang Tian shook his head repeatedly. "On the contrary, I think he is a superhero." Parker's face relaxed a lot and he raised his eyebrows. "Why do you see that?" Fang Tian said, "Spider-Man never harmed innocent citizens. On the contrary, he was protecting them. I watched some videos on the internet. He couldn't save anyone. There are only a few people." Parker said proudly, "It's not that exaggerated. Let me praise Spider-Man." "Parker, why are you so proud?" Parker concealed it. "My idol is also Spider-Man, of course I am proud of it." Fang Tian pretended to be mysterious. "Actually, I know Spider-Man's true identity. Are you interested?" Parker. "Huh, real or fake?" Fang Tian had already finished his meal and wiped his mouth. "I can tell you that Spider-Man is a student in our school." While talking, he also glanced at Parker deliberately. "If you want to know what's going on, you can come to me tonight. You know where my home is." After that, he ignored Parker's expression and walked away. After Fang Tian left, Parker was a little distracted and finished the meal in 2 or 3 mouthfuls. He didn't know what he was thinking. That night, Fang Tian didn't do any of his usual hunting. Instead of taking action, he stayed at home and waited for the arrival of Spider-Man. The night was getting darker. Suddenly, the window moved, and there was another person in the room. The red and blue tights covered the person's body completely. In fact, it was Spider-Man. The two faced off for a few seconds. A hoarse voice came out from under the mask. "I heard that you know my true identity." Fang Tian felt a little funny in his heart. What the hell is this? Spider-Man knew what I told Parker that night and even broke into the door. Anyone with a normal IQ can guess that the two are closely related. Husky, the voice said again. "Why are you laughing?" Fang Tian smiled wholeheartedly, with fighting intent on his face. "You want to know? Come and hit me." With a shudder, he was in front of Spider-Man and hit him with an uppercut on the chin. As if he was predicting the future, Spider-Man leaned back sharply to avoid the blow. With a sneer, a spider thread shot out from his wrist. He had squatted on the window edge. Seeing that Spider-Man would not be able to hit him if he didn't take action, Fang Tian stopped. "The space here is too small and we can't use it. Why don't we go outside?" After that, he turned around in front of Spider-Man and exposed his back. A hoarse voice came. "You exposed your back so carelessly." Fang Tian didn't look back. "Follow me quickly, otherwise, we'll wait until everyone knows your identity." Spider-Man's voice finally became a little angry. "Don't force me to take action, you can't bear it." Having said that, he still followed. There was no words all the way, and he soon arrived at an abandoned factory. The area was not small, and there were no outsiders. Fang Tian stopped with satisfaction. "This place is good, this is it." The two continued to confront each other. Fang Tian was still the first to take action. He stomped on the ground with force and rushed towards Spider-Man like a bullet. He repeated his old trick and hit his chin with an uppercut. Just as the prospect reappeared, Spider-Man was still an iron bridge dodged the blow. The difference was that at the same time, Fang Tian lowered his body slightly and used his sweeping kick. Suddenly receiving this blow, Spider-Man remained calm and put his hands on the ground. With a little effort, his body jumped up nimbly and stuck to the ceiling. At this time, his hoarse voice changed a bit. "I have no enmity with you and I don't want to take action against you. Why are you forcing me so?" Spider-Man's agility, his nerve reflex speed is 40 times that of ordinary people, plus his spider sense ability. If he just dodges, Fang Tian really has nothing to do with him at this time. So he won't hide it. He raised his head and said to Spider-Man, "Parker, Peter Parker, come down quickly. I knew it was you, come here and have a good fight with me." Spider-Man hesitated and didn't want to admit it. Fang Tian simply said, "I know it's you, you don't have to hide it. We've been friends for so long and I still don't know you." He was just a thin boy before, but suddenly one day he was able to punch away the strong Fleischer. "Who were you trying to scare?" Spider-Man finally jumped down and took off his hood, feeling a little embarrassed. "I thought I concealed myself well, but now that you know I am Spider-Man, why do you still want to fight me?" Fang Tian was talking nonsense. "Now that it's now, I won't hide it from you. One day, I was bitten by an ant. Later, I found that my strength was getting stronger and my defense was much improved. That's why I want to have a fight with you to see how strong I am." If these words are heard in other people's ears, they will naturally be considered as fooling people. In Spider-Man's case, he is a little doubtful. After all, if he is bitten by a spider, can't he let others be bitten by ants? Chapter 11. Parker wanted to say something else, but Fang Tian didn't want to listen anymore. With his calves slightly bent, he jumped 7 or 8 meters and was already in front of Spider-Man. Using their hands together, they formed a sword and slashed Washin to his head with one force. Spider-Man jumped slightly, but jumped above Fang Tian, turned 180 degrees, and punched Fang Tian in the back. Fang Tian suddenly accelerated as if he had been hit by a car, and hit an old piece of machinery in the distance. There was a roar, smoke and dust flew everywhere, and the machine turned into a pile of scrap metal. "Oops, I forgot to keep it." Before he finished speaking, a groan came from the scrap metal pile. "By the way, this is how it feels, let's continue." In the smoke, a figure walked out unscathed. Spider-Man's blow was indeed different. The blow on his body made Fang Tian feel as comfortable as taking a sauna, and he almost groaned. The effect of the beating was remarkable, and Fang Tian became more energetic. At this time, Fang Tian didn't have any special means, but he was powerful, his defense was even stronger, and he got stronger as he fought. Seeing that Fang Tian was fine, Parker felt relieved and started to fight. With a twist of his wrist, 2 strands of spider silk shot out, and his figure swayed over. Fang Tian saw the right moment, jumped up and tore off the spider thread. Spider-Man's figure immediately fell down. Turning over, he landed lightly. Seeing Fang Tian rushing over, he raised his hand and 2 nets came towards him. Fang Tian's vision was blocked and he jumped away. When he raised his hand to clear the cobwebs from his face, he received 2 more old punches. Huge power surged in, and Fang Tian fell to the ground involuntarily. Feeling the increase in his skill, he then thought, the main purpose of today was to get beaten, and it was not to really defeat Spider-Man, so why be anxious? At the moment, my mind calmed down. He stood up again and said to Parker, your body is very agile, but your strength seems not to be very good. After hearing Fang Tian's ridicule, Parker also wanted to win. Relying on his flexibility, he attacks everywhere. 10 minutes passed. Fang Tian had received countless punches and kicks, and his clothes were in tatters. After so long, Spider-Man didn't get hit, so he was a little careless. Just look at his skilled 2 balls of spider silk flying towards him, and his body followed suit, wanting to give Fang Tian another heavy blow. Fang Tian did not dodge or even make a move to parry. He took the opportunity to swing his arm and hit Parker on the head. Fang Tian received the punch and remained motionless, but there were spiderweb-like cracks under his feet. But Spider-Man couldn't do it anymore. He flipped 3.5 times in a row and hit the wall. After a long while, Parker shook his head and got up from the ground. Fang Tian smiled and said, how is it? How do you feel? Parker smiled bitterly. I hit you dozens of times, but you were unharmed. I was just a little careless, and I was already dizzy after receiving a blow from you. Fang Tian, he made a gesture of invitation. We haven't had enough fun yet, let's continue. Parker had just received a punch and wanted to take revenge. The 2 of them rolled over and started fighting again. Spider-Man didn't dare to be careless this time and took advantage of his agility to swing back and forth in the air. Fang Tian was impatient, so while he was climbing on the steel beam, he rose into the sky and kicked the steel beam away. Parker was not confused at all, the spider silk shot out, and he dodged again. After all, Fang Tian couldn't fly at this time, so he still fell down, rolled on the ground, and stood up. Suddenly I heard a voice behind me, I'm here. Before he finished speaking, he received a kick on his back. More than 10 tons of power exploded, and Fang Tian immediately flew out, crashed through the roof of the factory building, and flew high into the sky. For a long time, Fang Tian came down. Parker climbed onto the roof. Just as he showed his head, there was a sound of wind behind him. Spider-Man secretly knew something was wrong and used the lazy donkey rolling stunt to dodge the blow. Before Spider-Man could stand up, Fang Tian stomped with all his strength. A big hole suddenly broke in the ceiling, and the 2 of them fell together. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Fang Tian pounced and punched Parker twice. But the results did not stop there. Spider-Man had already reacted, and 2 strands of spider silk flew out, stuck to the far wall, and flew out with a whoosh. Fang Tian only felt that his fist was empty and hit the concrete floor, reaching his elbow. Lying on the wall, Parker gasped, why don't we leave it like this? If we fight again, this place will collapse. Fang Tian looked around and nodded in agreement. The 2 walked out together. Spider-Man has 2 more panda eyes on his face, and Fang Tian is in tatters and dressed in a beggar's outfit. On the way, Parker looked at Fang Tian's unscathed look with some envy. Your defense is really nothing to say. My strength is not to mention much, at least more than 10 tons. Hitting you is like scratching an itch. Fang Tian, I thought to myself, it's not a tickle, it's a massage. Single quote. But he said, you punched me hundreds of times and kicked me a dozen times, and I only punched you 3 times. There are gains and losses, right? Parker thought for a moment and nodded in agreement. Suddenly, Parker seemed to remember something again. If I was bitten by a spider, I would call him Spider-Man. If you were bitten by an ant, would you call me Ant-Man in the future? It seemed that Parker believed Fang Tian's casual nonsense. But it's true, with all the hard work and huge strength, isn't it just like an ant? Thinking about how others would call him Ant-Man in the future, Fang Tian shuddered and shook his head repeatedly. What Ant-Man? It's extremely unpleasant. You'd better continue to call me Fang Tian. Besides, I don't want to be like you. Go out and fight criminals all day. Parker was a little disappointed when he heard this, but he didn't force it. After all, everyone has his own ambitions. At the intersection, the two said goodbye to each other and went their separate ways. While walking on the road, Fang Tian felt it secretly. For now, he still has nothing to do with Spider-Man. If he is in an open scene with many high-rise buildings, Spider-Man can move forward and retreat freely without even being able to touch a hair on his own. Similarly, Spider-Man's attacks are just tonic for himself. This time I got beaten tonight, and I gained a lot. Sure enough, the more powerful someone beats you, the better the effect will be. Spider-Man's beating was so severe that he was hit by several bullets. Thinking of the hail of bullets he suffered that night, Fang Tian felt a little nostalgic. He turned around and walked towards the Hell Gang's strip club instead of going home. After a battle with Spider-Man, Fang Tian was not far away from the second-level magic weapon. If the Hell Gang stores enough ammunition, they might be able to advance tonight. Fang Tian has been looking forward to this advancement for a long time. In the mortal weapon stage, he just has strong defense and not weak strength. In the magical weapon stage, according to his induction, he can already form runes in his body and use some special abilities. There will be more means by then, and Fang Tian can't help but look forward to it. It was already late at night, but the lights in the ballroom were still bright. This time, there was no need for Fang Tian to enter. The security guards at the door were still the same too, and they were deeply impressed by Fang Tian. Seeing that the evil star was coming again, he immediately respectfully invited him in and informed the boss, Wolf. When Wolf heard his subordinates report that Fang Tian was here again, his eyes flashed fiercely. Immediately, he adjusted his expression and came out with a smile on his face. Seeing Wolf appear, Fang Tian casually ordered, "The dance hall will not be open today, let those people leave." Wolf agreed solemnly. He summoned a younger brother and said, "Please invite all the guests out and tell them that they are all free of charge today." As he said this, he took advantage of Fang Tian's unpreparedness and made a gesture. Fang Tian noticed his little movements, but also wanted to see what he was planning, so he turned a blind eye. "Bartender, a few more drinks, just like last time." Soon, the bartender brought over several cups of black-brown North Island iced tea. Fang Tian picked up a cup and drank it in one gulp. After tasting it, he felt something was different, but he couldn't tell what the difference was. After a moment, the wine was refined. It melted. The heat flow in the body was much more than normal. Fang Tian's face showed a cold expression. It seemed that there was some manipulation in the wine. Since someone came to deliver the food, why didn't he take it? Put all the glasses of wine together after drinking it down, he said, "A few more drinks." Wolf's face was filled with joy. "Why are you still standing there? Pour a few more glasses for the adults." I don't know what was added to this wine, but it worked well. These dozen glasses of wine were topped with 500 kilograms of high-quality steel. Fang Tian naturally accepted them all. All the guests in the ballroom were quickly invited out. Fang Tian noticed that a tall middle-aged man came in and was greeted by a younger brother. It seemed that this was Wolf's trump card. Watching the man come in, Wolf seemed to be more confident. "Sir, I don't know what you want to do when you come today." Fang Tian said, "Have you replenished the weapons and ammunition?" Wolf, "It's enough, sir, don't worry." Fang Tian took the lead and walked towards the basement. In the basement, boxes and boxes of ammunition had been replenished. It looked like there were twice as many as last time. Fang Tian stood far away. "Come on, as usual." Wolf's face was filled with joy. "Look, you're not dead today. Even if you're a mutant, at least you should be a human being. I added so much muscle relaxant to the wine that even 10 whales would be weak. I don't know it now. 20 or 30 guns are firing. What can you do when you feel it?" Immediately, he called 20 or 30 men, stood in a dense row, and started firing. Fang Tian closed his eyes and enjoyed the heat gushing out of his body. Half an hour passed. Wolf's face was already a little confused. The effect of the medicine should have taken effect long ago. Why is he not dead? You know, although he also invited a mutant, if the mutant really takes action, the price is very expensive, and even he has to pay half of his net worth. But it seems that it will be impossible without heavy bleeding today. Thinking of this, Wolf winked at the person next to him. The person walked out wisely. In the basement, the man in the middle whom Fang Tian saw was invited in. This middle-aged man was tall and wearing loose clothes. The hood on the clothes covered his face, so his appearance could not be seen clearly. When he arrived in the basement, he spoke first. You've thought about it, you want me to take action. Wolf gritted his teeth and nodded. The middle-aged man said, stop the gun. As soon as the gunfire stopped, Fang Tian opened his eyes. He said expressionlessly, grandsons, have you invited a backer? The middle-aged man responded, do you think that with a body of steel, you are invincible? What a frog in the well. Fang Tian crossed his hands and glanced sideways at the man. What are you doing? Big talk here. Didn't your mother tell you? Before talking to grandpa, you have to learn how to bark like a dog. The middle-aged man was so angry that he was shaking all over and his face was blood red. You were really looking for death. Considering that you are all mutants, I wanted to spare you a life. Since you don't want to live, then go die. He raised his hands, and an invisible pulse came over. The surrounding lights flickered on and off, and Fang Tian was a little confused. Hey, the puppy in front barked so loudly, why did it suddenly stop moving? The middle-aged man looked in disbelief. How is that possible? How could you be fine? A few more pulses came over. Fang Tian stood there, becoming more and more confused. The middle-aged man's several attacks didn't even bring him any improvement in skill. It was as if he hadn't been hit. You know, even if an ordinary person punches him, he will improve, but it will be very small. Is this mutant worse than an ordinary person? At this time, the mutant waved his hand, and a pulse hit the light next to him. There was a crackling sound, and the lamp shattered on the ground. It seemed that his superpower was still useful. The middle-aged man seemed to suddenly realize it, and shouted, I know, my superpower has taken effect. Now he is just an ordinary person, just holding on. Why are you still cold? Shoot him quickly. Him. This middle-aged man, named Augustus, is a mutant. His ability is to send out special pulses, which can disable other people's powers and also affect some electronic instruments. No wonder he thinks he is the nemesis of mutants. But Fang Tian's physical strength is not caused by any supernatural power. So, if his body is actually so strong, what can this mutant do to him? As soon as the mutant finished speaking, dense gunshots rang out again. What made their eyes almost bulge was that the bullets hit Fang Tian with a tinkling sound and then landed on the ground. Where did they cause any damage? Fang Tian advanced against the hail of bullets. The first time he fought against the Hell Gang, more than a dozen bullets could shock him and make him retreat continuously, and he could feel pain when the bullets hit his body. Now, his strength and defense have more than doubled. I have long been able to ignore these attacks. Fang Tian walked in without stopping, and the gunfire stopped in pieces. Everyone's legs were weak and they didn't dare to move. The mutant Augustus was still muttering to himself in despair, how is it possible? How could my ability fail? Fang Tian was originally going to slap him to death, but suddenly changed his mind. A hand knife struck the back of his neck, and he lay limply on the ground. Fang Tian glanced at the people around him expressionlessly. Continue. The people around him breathed a sigh of relief and continued to shoot. It's not that Fang Tian is soft-hearted and ready to let these people go. But if this continues, he will advance. When these people run out of bullets and are used as waste, that's when they die. Continuous gunshots rang out until early in the morning and there were no more bullets. As mentioned before, for Fang Tian, the attack effect of sentient things is the strongest, while the attack effect of heartless things is only 1%. If not, wouldn't it be more useful to find a waterfall at random and be hit by continuous impacts than to look for it everywhere? Although these guns are controlled by people, they are still worse than attacking directly with fists or cold weapons. Fortunately, guns can fire continuously, dozens or even hundreds of rounds per minute, which is something that fists cannot achieve. At this time, Fang Tian had reached the edge of promotion. He looked around at the sockets on the wall, and his eyes lit up. He punched a hole in the wall and reached out to pinch the wire. A numbing sensation came over him. Even though the effect was very poor, he still broke through after a few minutes. In silence, Fang Tian was completely different. The improvement of defense, physical strength, reaction speed, and 5 senses is the most basic and inevitable. In addition, according to the induction in the dark, he knew that with his second level low grade, that is, the level of the low grade magic weapon, he could form a rune, and he would not be able to bear any more. He now has 4 choices for this rune. First, the space ability that matches the refining ability. Second, recovery ability improvement. Third, defense bonus. Fourth, control current. Only one of these 4 abilities can be selected. Thinking about his experiences during this period, Fang Tian felt a little enlightened. It seems that what abilities you have are also related to your own experience. Spatial ability is probably like refining ability, which is automatically derived when you are promoted. The resilience is probably related to the lizard potion. The increase in defense is naturally due to the fact that he has withstood numerous blows. Controlling the current is related to the fact that before he was promoted, he relied on electric shock for his final kick. Looking at these 4 abilities, do you still need to choose? Of course it's the supporting space capabilities. After making his choice, Fang Tian felt a mysterious rune forming in his body. He couldn't describe what the rune looked like, but instinctively, he knew how to use it. With a slight touch, a spherical space was formed in his body with the rune as the center, about 3 meters in diameter. From now on, if you want to refine something, you don't have to eat it with your mouth. You just need to collect it into the space in your body and it can be automatically refined with a thought. I don't know how much more convenient it is than eating by mouth. What's more, if he eats it with his mouth, there are many things that he can't swallow, but if he uses the income space to refine it, it will be different. Aren't there some experimental products in front of us? Fang Tian looked around and showed a ferocious smile. Anyway, we have already planned not to let these people live, so wouldn't it be better to reuse the waste? With a slight movement, Fang Tian rushed into the crowd. The speed displayed at this time even surprised Fang Tian himself. Before those people had time to react, 2 of them had their heads blown off. Brains splattered and blood spurted out. Wolf shouted, "Grandpa, spare your life." He knelt down and kowtowed. Fang Tian didn't hesitate, raised his leg and swept across. Wolf flew far away and knocked over the shelves. I was out of breath and couldn't see myself alive. Various firearms fell to the ground with a clatter. Someone tried to escape, but there was only one exit in the basement. Where could they escape? As soon as he started, he was discovered by Fang Tian. With a lunge, he rushed forward, formed a sword with his hands, and slashed at him. The man was immediately cut in half. Fang Tian has spared the lives of these people, but they are seeking death themselves. Of course, Fang Tian will not show mercy at this time. Projecting the space inside his body, his figure flickered, and he arrived in front of another person. This man was a little brave, so he picked up a grenade and wanted to die together. Fang Tian stretched out his hand, and his sleeve seemed to turn into a black hole, inhaled it with the man. Not a single bubble emerged, and the man and the grenade had turned into a stream of heat. Seeing that this trick worked, Fang Tian kept flashing. 2 minutes later, there was no one else in the basement except the mutant Pulse, who was unconscious on the ground. Even the firearms and ammunition were all taken into the space within Fang Tian's body and directly refined. At this time, the basement had become bare, leaving only large blood stains on the ground, proving that there were dozens of living people here a few minutes ago. After refining dozens of people, Fang Tian's skill has improved a lot. Speaking of which, the chaos manual practiced by Fang Tian is worthy of the word chaos in the name of the technique. It is true that everything can be turned into chaos and everything can be refined. Fang Tian felt it carefully. If the skill gained from refining a ton of steel is used as the basis, then the skill that an ordinary person can improve by refining a ton of steel is similar to that of refining a ton of steel. At this time, because he had just refined many people, his own skill was about 130 times that of refining one person. If you want to break through to the 3rd level, which is the level of magic weapon, you must at least reach the level of skill that requires 1,000 people. It's a pity that as his strength increases, the skill gained from refining ordinary people or ordinary materials will become less and less. Otherwise, with his current refining ability, he can buy hundreds of tons of high-quality steel at will and upgrade it in a few days. Now it seems that if you want to improve your skill, both the refining method and the beating method can be given equal emphasis and used together. The beating method is like a reusable resource. A small amount makes a lot, and the more times it is used, the better it is. It is far more than what can be obtained by directly refining one person. The refining method is like pulling out the roots once, and you will gain a lot, but there will be no next time. Both have their advantages. As for Fang Tian's use just now, choosing the space ability was really a good move. After forming a space within the body, this space can not only be used as a storage space, but can also be used to refine various materials in the space. Not only that, by projecting the space to the outside world, Fang Tian can also move freely within the space. In other words, he can now teleport. However, the range of each teleportation can only be within 3 meters. This distance increases with the growth of space in the body. In the future, as the strength increases, the distance will naturally become farther. Fang Tian thought about it and divided the space in his body into 2 parts, one for storage and the other for refining and teleportation. Of course, the storage space changes size at any time according to the object stored. There won't be a problem of storing a coin and occupying several cubic meters. Isn't this storage space known as a murderer and a must-have at home? Now that he has one, he finally has some leading man vibes. After taking a look at the mutant still lying on the ground, Fang Tian hesitated. A thought came to mind: now that he has no way to control others, why keep him? They might even reveal their secrets, so we might as well practice together. As soon as the lights dimmed, a black hole appeared out of thin air above the man and sucked him in. After entering the internal space, the man suddenly woke up. A surge of energy surged out of his body, and he actually wanted to resist. But this was just a dying struggle. In less than 3 seconds, he was completely refined. This time, the improved skill was unexpectedly high, comparable to everyone just now. Fang Tian became interested, but he didn't expect that mutants would have such benefits. It seems that mutants will be unlucky in the future. I walked out of the basement and looked at the sky outside. The east had turned white and it was almost dawn. After not sleeping all night, Fang Tian didn't feel tired at all. Originally, his plan was to follow Dr. Lizard and go to the sewers to seize more lizard potions. By now, the lizard potion doesn't have much effect. However, I still have to go to school. He is very interested in having a few fights with Dr. Lizard. After the fight, you can still follow him and grab a few potions, why not? No matter what, one potion can hold up to 5 ordinary people. After beating him a few more times, Professor Lizard might escape somewhere, so in the end, he might as well just train him. Fang Tian is not Spider-Man, and he has no feelings for Professor Lizard. After all, the two of them had only met once. Seeing that it was already getting light, Fang Tian casually took the pistol from his waist, threw it into the space inside his body, and walked towards his home. When I got home, I took a shower, changed into complete clothes, and went out. There was still some time before class, and he was going to the gun store to buy some bullets as snacks. He has eaten all the steel nails in his home. It stands to reason that he can now use the space in his body to refine materials, so he doesn't have to use his mouth to eat these things. But when he was shot for the first time, Fang Tian discovered that the bullets tasted really good, just like sandwich biscuits. Just like some people, even though they are full, they still like to eat snacks. This is the truth. However, for Fang Tian now, the definition of snacks is a little different from others. When you walk into a gun store, you will see a dazzling array of guns. Fang Tian couldn't recognize most of them. After all, he was not a gun enthusiast. He collected the pistol out of curiosity. In the United States, gun ownership is a legal right of citizens. Therefore, buy it is also easier to support. If you have a gun license, you only need to fill out a questionnaire with your name, address, driver's license number, etc. After filling it out, you can purchase it. If you do not have a firearms license, you will need to fill out another, much more detailed questionnaire. If you have no criminal record, drug abuse history, criminal record, etc., the gun store will be able to purchase a gun after verifying your information. Of course, this is just a formal procedure. As for whether the gun shop implements it, God knows. This time Fang Tian just bought bullets, so it wasn't that troublesome. He just told the boss, and the boss asked him directly, what caliber and bullet are needed. Fang Tian bought these bullets as snacks. Of course, he bought some of each kind and changed the taste from time to time. Fang Tian bought some bullets of various calibers. The more you order at one time, the cheaper the price. In the end, Fang Tian purchased 20,000 rounds of ammunition for less than $5,000. That works out to less than 30 cents per round. After packing the box, the boss asked, "Where's your car? I'll help you lift it up." You know, the average weight of these bullets of different specifications may be less than 10 grams. 20,000 rounds added up, it's also amazing, weighing more than 100 kilograms. That is about 300 pounds. Fang Tian came here empty-handed, where is the car? So he said, "Don't worry about this, boss, I can just move it myself." The boss said kindly, "You may not understand the weight of so many bullets. If you don't have a car, just call a taxi." Fang Tian waved his hand, "No need." After that, he easily picked up the box and walked out. The owner of the gun shop looked at him in amazement from behind. This man looks quite thin. I didn't expect him to be so strong. After exiting the store and seeing no one around, Fang Tian waved his hand and put the box into the space. Although this little weight is like nothing to him, he still has to go to school, so he can't just carry 20,000 rounds of ammunition. In this case, people might regard him as a lunatic. I arrived at the school empty-handed. It was still early and the campus was empty with few people coming. Sitting in the classroom, Fang Tian was a little bored. I simply took out a box of bullets and started eating them. The bullets taste good, and Fang Tian is a little addicted to eating them. By the time someone arrived, he had almost eaten a box of bullets. Putting away the bullets, Fang Tian said hello to the man who came. "Good morning, Gwen." Gwen replied, "Good morning to you too." Then she asked curiously, Did you come in time for the school bell? Why is it so early today?" Fang Tian joked, "Long time no see, didn't I want to see you earlier?" Gwen touched Fang Tian's forehead. "You don't have a fever. What nonsense are you talking about? Didn't you just see me yesterday?" Fang Tian, "Did you know that there is a saying in China that says, 1 day without seeing you is like 3 autumns? Gwen savored this sentence. Not seeing each other for 1 day is like 3 years apart. This is so romantic. She suddenly reacted. This should be used to describe a couple in love. How can it describe us? Fang Tiandao. Why not? Describe me. This is how I feel. Gwen laughed and patted Fang Tian on the shoulder. Forget it, I won't talk to you anymore, class is about to begin. As soon as he finished speaking, the class bell rang in time. Gwen has always been a top student, but for some reason, when she returned to her seat today, she felt a little uneasy. She thought about Fang Tian's words over and over in her heart, feeling a little happy. The day passed like this. On campus, nothing happened. After returning home, Fang Tian thought that he had nothing to do in school and had no intention of studying seriously. After defeating Professor Lizard this time, do you want to drop out of school? But, what can he do after dropping out of school? That night, Fang Tianzheng was lying on the bedboard, eating snacks 1 bite at a time. Suddenly, there was a knock on the window. Spider-Man crawled in weakly. There were 2 long wounds in front of him, which were scratched by some sharp weapon. Seeing this scene, Fang Tian slapped his head in annoyance. Isn't this the scene that appeared in the previous movie after Spider-Man and Dr. Lizard fought in the sewer? He only remembered that Professor Lizard appeared in the school, so he stayed in the school and waited. But they forgot that the reason why Professor Lizard appeared was because he recognized Parker's identity in the sewer and went to school to hunt him down. However, in the previous life, without Fang Tian's participation, Parker went to Gwen's house after being injured. But now, Parker knows that Fang Tian also possesses powerful power, so he naturally comes to find him. Fang Tian pretended not to know, and said in shock, "Parker, what's going on with you?" Spider-Man smiled weakly. "It's a long story, I'll talk about it later. Do you have any medicine here?" Fang Tian I rummaged through the boxes and found gauze, medical alcohol, and some Yunnan Baiyao. These things were left behind by his predecessor. With Fang Tian's current magic weapon, how could he need any medicine? I cleaned Parker's wound, applied Yunnan Baiyao, and tied gauze. He helped him lie down. Parker lay there and spoke. Originally, you said you didn't want to do any heroic activities, so I wanted to solve it alone without involving you. Now it seems that I have to ask you for help. Fang Tian, what exactly is it? What is it, mysterious? Parker said. You said you have paid attention to Spider-Man, then you should know what happened on the Williamsburg Bridge, right? You mean, the big lizard that caused the chaos in the legend? Parker nodded affirmatively. That's not a legend, it's a real big lizard. This injury of mine was caused by him. That big lizard is even stronger than me, and this time the two of us will join forces. In Parker's impression, Fang Tian is still the same person with strong defense, his strength is on par with him, and far less agile than him. But in fact, after the two separated, Fang Tian has been upgraded again, and he is completely different. Even against Dr. Lizard, who is more powerful than Spider-Man, he can defeat him if he thinks about it. But there is no need to say this, just prove it with actions. Next, Parker told him the whole story. And his previous life I've seen almost the same movie. Dr. Connors lost an arm in the war. He always dreamed of restoring his arm through lizard potion. With the help of Parker, he succeeded. Under the pressure of others, Connors' Dr. Nass experimented on himself and turned into the cruel Dr. Lizard. That's the whole thing. The only question now is, does he want to help Parker? This question is not a problem at all. With or without Parker, he was going to trouble Professor Lizard, and he agreed to Parker, which not only helped others but also helped himself. Of course, Fang Tian nodded without hesitation. Seeing Fang Tian nod, Parker was also grateful, but he didn't show it. I just kept apologizing to Fang Tian. I'm really sorry for getting you involved. Fang Tian said dumbfounded. Forget it, don't apologize. What I said that day was that I didn't want to go out and do chivalry all day long, but that didn't mean that I was a cold-blooded guy. I just can't be as reckless as you. If anything like this happens again, feel free to contact me. When Parker heard this, he stopped talking and just kept it in mind. The next day, the two of them got up early in the morning. Parker's recovery was still very good. After one night, the wound was almost healed. He moved quickly and didn't look like he was injured at all. On this day, Fang Tian never left Gwen's side. This made Gwen feel uncomfortable. Why are you so close to me? Fang Tian looked at Gwen and said, ever since I saw you, I can't live without you. Gwen was speechless by his shamelessness and could only let Fang Tian follow. In fact, in Gwen's heart, she didn't hate Fang Tian. If she was followed by a nasty person, she would have gone crazy. At noon, people were coming in and out of the corridor. Suddenly, an inhuman roar sounded, a big hole was broken in the toilet floor, and a claw the size of a cattail fan stretched out. Amidst the roar, a humanoid lizard had emerged from the sewer. This lizard had green scales the size of coins. It was as tall as two people. It was wearing a tattered lab coat. It had dagger-like nails on its fingers and toes, which were extremely sharp. It emerged from the sewer. After reaching the ground, it casually tore off its tattered clothes and was completely naked. With a wave of its hand, it smashed the toilet into rubble. It charged sideways, broke a big hole in the wall, and rushed out. The students coming and going saw the corridor. Suddenly a huge monster appeared, and they all screamed and fled towards the door. Fang Tian and Parker looked at each other. You send Gwen away first, and I will stop it. The matter was urgent, so Parker didn't say much, grabbed Gwen and ran out. Gwen didn't know the situation yet. What are you two doing? Professor Lizard had already turned around the corner. It saw Parker at a glance. Parker, where can you escape? As it spoke, it had already rushed over. Fang Tian saw that it simply ignored him. He shouted loudly, look at the beating. He already kicked Professor Lizard on his side. Professor Lizard fell down, and his huge body hit the locker next to the corridor, denting the locker. Professor Lizard roared and turned around. It's you. Are you coming to stop me too? Fang Tian said. I'm not familiar with you, why should I stop you? Professor Lizard relaxed and went to find Parker. At this time, Fang Tian's next words came over. I just saw you were too ugly and couldn't help but kick you. Professor Lizard's green face almost turned red with anger, and his blood vessels were beating loudly, seeking death. He kicked his feet on the ground and rushed over. Fang Tian did not dodge or dodge, letting the dagger-like claws scratch his body, producing little sparks. Patting its big bald head. The head has become bigger, but the IQ has not improved. Professor Lizard suddenly bumped Fang Tian into the wall on the other side. What a hard turtle shell. Feeling the growth inside his body, feeling the heat flow, Fang Tian stretched and said, your massage is pretty good. Without getting up, he lay on the ground and raised his legs hard, kicking Professor Lizard in the crotch. This time, Fang Tian miscalculated. Professor Lizard responded that it seemed that the crotch was no longer its vital point. Although he was not injured, Professor Lizard was still furious after receiving this blow. Coupled with the provocation in front of Fang Tian, he shouted angrily, boy, you are dead. Even if you let Parker run away today, I will tear you alive. Fang Tian stood up and patted the dust on his body. Quickly, come on, you are such an incompetent masseur that you only press the massage twice and you want to be lazy. Professor Lizard was so angry that he couldn't speak, so he opened his big mouth and bit him. You know, Professor Lizard looks like a beast, but he actually has human intelligence. At the very least, he has a much higher IQ than a scumbag like Fang Tian. It can make him so angry that he opens his mouth and bites. You can see how angry he is at this time. It is estimated that he has already thought of cutting Fang Tian into pieces at this time. If Professor Lizard reached out to hit him, Fang Tian would be happy to stand up straight and take a beating, but he couldn't stand it if he had to take a big bite out of the blood covered in saliva. Therefore, with an elbow, the professor's teeth were knocked out. The teeth clinked on the floor, but Professor Lizard didn't care. In an instant, a new set of teeth had grown. It roared again, and kicked Fang Tian's stomach with its strong lower limbs. Fang Tianfei was flying in the air, and he had time to adjust his posture before he crashed through the wall and flew into the classroom. Yeah. Perfect score. Professor Lizard followed in violently, enlarging the hole in the wall 3 times. He stepped on Fang Tian's leg with his hind paws, and clawed it down with both claws. Fang Tian's voice came from underneath him. It feels so good, come here more often. The sharp nails on Professor Lizard's front paws were all worn away, and there were no scars on Fang Tian's body. Seeing this situation, the furious Professor Lizard gradually came to his senses and turned to leave. How could Fang Tian let the experience gift package run away? He grabbed its tail with one hand and said, want to run? Stay. Before any effort could be made, the thick tail broke automatically, and Professor Lizard stopped walking. Originally wanting to throw away the tail that was still struggling in his hand, Fang Tian changed his mind and put the tail into the space inside his body. As soon as he entered the space, the tail melted and disappeared like running water, and a power comparable to refining a person appeared in his body. Fang Tian looked at Professor Lizard, whose tail had been reborn, and his eyes lit up. Isn't this a gift package of renewable skills? Where can he escape? He suddenly jumped up from the ground and rushed towards Professor Lizard's back. Using 80% of his strength, he thrust his 2 peaks into his ears, and Professor Lizard staggered down. Before evolving, Fang Tian's power was already on par with Spider-Man, let alone after evolving. Even compared to Professor Lizard, it is much bigger. It seemed that he had been suppressed and beaten by him before, but Fang Tian did it deliberately and wanted to receive more beatings. In just a short period of time, the increase in skill was equivalent to that of refining 4 or 5 people. He stepped on Professor Lizard and ripped off its tail. Professor Lizard struggled on the ground and dug a big hole in the cement floor, but it still didn't work. After this tail is refined, the 3rd tail will have grown more than half. When Parker came in, he saw this scene. I saw Professor Lizard, who had beaten him so hard yesterday that he was unable to fight back, being pinned to the ground and brutally tortured by Fang Tian. One of his tails was pulled out and another one grew out. After the tail landed on the ground, it disappeared for some reason. Spider-Man was dumbfounded. What's going on? Fang Tian was about to answer when the lizard professor at his feet took the opportunity to struggle hard and finally escaped. He threw himself at Gwen at the door with a ferocious look on his face. It turned out that after Gwen was pulled out by Parker, she felt uneasy and turned back to see what was going on. Who would have thought that in the blink of an eye, a ferocious-looking and extremely strong big lizard rushed over. She was so frightened that her face turned pale, and she closed her eyes and waited for death. It's been a long time, but I haven't felt the pain I imagined. When he opened his eyes, he saw that it was Fang Tian standing in front of him. When Professor Lizard saw that it was Fang Tian again, he flipped his body in midair and changed direction. He pushed hard on Fang Tian's shoulders with his strong hind limbs, accelerated himself, crashed through the wall on the other side, turned around and ran away. This series of actions is dizzying to watch. When Parker chased after him, he only saw Professor Lizard's tail, which had not yet recovered to half its size, disappearing into the sewer entrance. Fang Tian pulled out the calf that was stuck in the ground. His feet were unscathed, but his shoes were in tatters. Gwen originally thought she was dead, but she didn't expect Fang Tian to stand in front of her and block the fatal blow for her. She didn't know what Fang Tian was capable of. She thought Fang Tian was dead and her tears were already falling. She had just been sad for 3 seconds when she heard a familiar voice. The lizard has run away, why are you crying at this time? Gwen looked up in disbelief, and saw that it was really Fang Tian, covered with everything but tattered clothes where is the trace of a scar. She burst into tears and laughed. Yuck. You scared me to death. I thought you were dead. As she said this, she threw herself into Fang Tian's arms. Fang Tian comforted him. It's okay, this little lizard can't hurt me yet. Gwen still held him tight. After a while, she reluctantly let go. Carefully pinching Fang Tian's skin, feeling the warm feeling, he blinked his big green eyes. It's strange, it feels like ordinary people, why is the defense so high? Fang Tian laughed. What if? My whole body is so stiff, how can I hug you? Parker turned back at this time, interrupted the two of them, and said worriedly, Professor Lizard ran away again, something is not good. A loudspeaker also sounded outside the school. Voice. Listen to the people inside, the building has been surrounded by the police. Surrender immediately, you have no way to escape. The three of them looked at each other, and Fang Tian said, Gwen, go out, Parker and I will track down the lizard. Professor. Gwen was a little worried. You have to be careful. Fang Tian said, the one who should be careful is Professor Lizard. You didn't see it just now. I pinned him down on the ground and beat him wildly. Gwen thought the same, he nodded in agreement. Fang Tian and Parker followed the professor to the sewer. Fang Tian looked at the time and seemed to suddenly remember something. He said to Parker, oops, I remembered something. Do you remember the canary equipment in the Osborne building? If Professor Lizard gets this equipment, everything will happen. Everyone in the city will be in trouble. When Parker heard this, he felt that with Professor Lizard's IQ, this thing was likely to happen, and he became anxious. Fang Tiandao. Why don't I stay here and search, and you go to Osborne Company quickly to make sure everything is safe. Anyway, there is nothing this Professor Lizard can do to me. Parker thought for a moment. Good idea, then be careful, I don't want to my best friend is injured. Fang Tian patted his chest. If you want me to get hurt, this lizard is not qualified. Parker turned and ran towards the sewer exit. Fang Tian also speeded up. At this time, Fang Tian's 5 senses had already surpassed those of ordinary people many times. The traces left by Professor Lizard's size were as obvious as light bulbs in his eyes. Soon, he arrived at Professor Lizard's lair. Professor Lizard had just stood up and was ready to go. Fang Tian shouted, you can leave, but the potion stays. Professor Lizard looked ruthless, as he saw that the two sides were about to fight. Fang Tian shouted again, think about it, Spider-Man has rushed to the Osborne building to protect the canary equipment. If you delay some time here, your wishful thinking will not come true. Professor Lizard added. Hesitated. Seeing this, Fang Tian said again, you can keep 1 potion. 1 potion serves as an antigen, and with the canary equipment, it is enough to cover the whole city. After hearing this, Professor Lizard was obviously very confused. What is your purpose? Why are you trying to stop me just now? Now, since you already know my plan, why are you ready to let me go? Fang Tian looked impatient. It doesn't matter so much. Just tell me what you are doing, do you want to leave now? Professor Lizard hesitated for a moment, took out a potion from his backpack, put down the other potions, faced Fang Tian warily, and slowly backed away. After exiting this space, it finally turned around, got down on all fours, and sped out. Fang Tian picked up his backpack and opened it. There were 7 or 8 lizard potions inside. This gain is not too small, and it can increase his skill for 30 or 40 people. This time, he didn't even drink. The space in his body opened up, so he rolled the potion in and directly refined the potion and the test tube together. Feeling the growing power in his body, Fang Tian grinned and laughed silently. In fact, Fang Tian's body at the 2nd level magic weapon level at this time is already equivalent to the foundation building realm of a cultivator. Logically speaking, people in this realm are first-time cultivators of immortality. With magic power running within their bodies, they can cast many spells. Even his body has surpassed that of ordinary people, with every movement of his hands and feet weighing thousands of kilograms. But Fang Tian has trained himself into a magic weapon, and naturally he cannot use the methods of ordinary immortal cultivators. He can only use various magical powers based on the runes condensed in his body, which is not as diverse as the methods of immortal cultivators. There are gains and losses. What Fang Tian lost was the diversity of methods, but what he gained was extremely powerful physical defense and strength. On the aspect of defense, the enemy's power attacking him is equivalent to tempering his body. Coupled with the instinct to refine all things, no matter how you think about it, the gains outweigh the losses. In terms of strength, the difference between thousands of kilograms and tens of tons is more than 10 times. Therefore, he is very satisfied with his body. In New York City, the sun is shining brightly today and the sky is blue. Among the tall buildings, there is a red and blue figure advancing rapidly. This figure was tightly wrapped in tight clothes, even the eyes. He raised his wrists and shot out 2 spider threads. The end of the spider silk automatically opened like a small hand and stuck tightly to the outer wall of the high-rise building. With strong arms, the figure swayed from a high place into the distance. On the road below me, vehicles were coming and going like beetles. He overtook the advancing beetles one after another, showing his impressive speed. At this point, Spider-Man was filled with anxiety. If Fang Tian's guess was correct, Dr. Lizard obtained the canary equipment. For New York, that would be as disastrous as a war breaking out in the city center. No one knows how many people will die in this disaster. Below the road, among the beetles coming and going, a policeman was directing traffic. Inadvertently, he looked up and saw that the person echoing above his head was none other than Spider-Man, who was wanted by the police. He immediately took out his walkie-talkie and reported to the police station, "I found Spider-Man, he went south." After receiving the report, the police station immediately dispatched all personnel. Hundreds of police officers, fully armed, wearing body armor, bulletproof helmets, and holding firearms, surrounded Spider-Man from all directions. The police even dispatched a police helicopter to track Spider-Man's movements. Hundreds of police officers lay in wait in front of Parker's path, some on rooftops, some under the windows of rooms, and some on standby on both sides of the road. The anxious Spider-Man didn't notice anything unusual and ran headlong into the dragnet specially prepared for him. Following the order from the operations captain, the police on the side fired first. Parker was so anxious that he didn't notice the ambush. He was suddenly attacked, but fortunately his spider sense and agile skills saved him once. I saw Spider-Man flipping over nimbly in midair and already attached to the wall of the roadside building, dodging the sudden blow. Looking back, I saw policemen everywhere, either brightly or darkly, on dark roads, on roofs of buildings in blind spots, and behind windows. Spider-Man didn't want to get entangled, he jumped up hard, and his body bounced onto the billboard in front of him. At the same time, there were several more bullet holes in the wall behind him. As if performing acrobatics, Parker flashed past several billboards and outdoor stairs, making his whole body flicker in light and dark. Several gunshots rang out, and the billboard that Parker passed by was hit and exploded, crackling with sparks of electricity. The police loudspeaker sounded all around. "Spider-Man, you have been surrounded by the police. You have no way to escape, surrender now." Parker can be considered a good citizen. Even if he was ambushed by hundreds of police for no reason, he had no idea of revenge. He ignored the police's voice and continued to move forward. He was about to break out of the encirclement. Around the corner, a sudden gust of wind hit his face. Coming. It turned out that the police helicopter had arrived. Spider-Man couldn't help but look up, and his eyes were suddenly dazzled by the sunlight. He stretched out his hand to block the sunlight, and a bullet flew over and hit Parker, who couldn't react in time. If this is a live bullet, Spider-Man is unlikely to become famous. After all, Parker is not like Fang Tian, who completely ignores bullets. He is still flesh and blood, and he will still be injured if he is hit by a bullet from the front. Fortunately, the police tried to capture Spider-Man alive, so this is an electro-optical bomb. The electro-optical bomb emitted a burst of dazzling electricity, and Parker twitched and fell from the air in a free fall. Spider-Man lay on the ground, motionless, as if he had been stunned. The police on the building sliding down the rope. Parker was surrounded on the ground from all sides. At this moment, Parker suddenly jumped up from the ground and slashed a policeman with his knife. The policeman flew out upside down, hit the vehicle behind, and stopped motionless. The surrounding policemen were frightened and tried to aim their guns. But at such a close distance, these actions were in vain. In the blink of an eye, the policemen were lying on the ground. With Spider-Man's strength, if he deliberately wanted to kill people, there would be no living people on the ground at this time. However, facing humans, he subconsciously restrained his strength and did not explode his more than 10 tons of fist power. Otherwise, even if these policemen were wearing body armor, they would be stopped and beaten in half. Looking at the policeman lying on the ground in the smashed car, he was about to turn around and leave when a familiar voice sounded behind him. "Don't move, raise your hands, you have been arrested." Parker recognized this voice. Gwen's father, Chief George. The director's voice was stern. "This is a live ammunition. I was hit, there is no chance of survival, you have to think carefully." Parker slowly raised his hand. "Listen to my explanation, you must let me go." How could George listen to him? If he came over with a gun in one hand and handcuffs in the other. Parker was tripped up by the police and wasted a lot of time. Professor Lizard, who took a step back, arrived at the Osborn building smoothly because most of the police were attracted by Parker. Along the way, Professor Lizard also encountered sporadic police obstructions, but Professor Lizard was not as soft-hearted as Parker. He was ruthless because he only had one lizard potion left on him, so he would not waste it on them. As a result, these policemen were beaten. Their muscles and bones were broken by Professor Lizard's beating, and their internal organs were sprayed all over the ground. No one was spared. In front of the Osborn building, Professor Lizard looked at the familiar scenes around him. The outer glass of the building is illuminated by light, and inside the building, a female figure is projected out of thin air. She is introducing the latest achievements of Osborn Enterprises in a soft voice, which is full of science fiction feeling. Familiar figures came in and out, but did not leave any waves in his cold heart. Professor Lizard roared and rushed into the building head-on. Suddenly, an extremely strong humanoid lizard, taller than the two men, broke through the bulletproof glass door and rushed in. The Osborn building, which was originally busy but orderly, was in chaos, with screams everywhere. Since the last time Fang Tian disguised himself as Professor Lizard and attacked the Osborn building, the security inside the building has been strengthened a lot. But under the powerful power of Professor Lizard, these security personnel are just delivering food. 10 minutes later, the assembled security personnel were already dead and wounded. In the hall, blood flowed everywhere, and broken limbs were everywhere. At some point, someone sounded the evacuation alarm inside the building. Amidst the piercing sirens, Professor Lizard was covered in blood and looked hideous. Ignoring the fleeing staff, the professor walked in the familiar direction of the laboratory. The people fleeing in all directions felt as if they were seeing the devil when they saw Professor Lizard. It wasn't until the professor turned a blind eye and walked over that those people breathed a sigh of relief and continued to escape out of the building. It didn't take long for the professor to find the canary device. He was relieved to see that the device was safe and sound. Muttering to himself, "Citizens of New York City, be lucky to meet a great scientist like me. From now on, everyone is equal, and disability will never exist for you again. Besides, you can still get such a strong and perfect body, isn't it 100 times better than before?" At this time, in the building, except for the piercing sirens and flashing lights, there was no one else around. As he spoke, he carried the canary equipment again and strode to the roof. Several hundred kilograms of steel creation, in his hands, is like a straw, insignificant. At this time, Spider-Man in the distance is still trying to explain the seriousness of the matter to Chief George. Chief George turns a deaf ear and only thinks that he is talking nonsense. After all, what happened during this period has been changed beyond recognition with Fang Tian's participation. For example, the relationship between Gwen and Spider-Man has not developed as before. Therefore, Sheriff George is not as friendly to Spider-Man as he originally was. Parker is very familiar with it. Gwen himself was not involved in this matter. In other words, the antidote that was supposed to be created by Gwen does not exist now. Not to mention, if it were not for Fang Tian's intentional connivance, Professor Lizard, where can he get the canary equipment and realize his dream of changing the world? Seeing that he can't explain it to Sheriff George, things are getting worse and worse. Spider-Man is ready to take action regardless of the situation. Suddenly, the sheriff waist the intercom rang. The police chief pressed the intercom, and an anxious voice came from inside. "Chief, something bad is going on." A large green lizard suddenly burst out of the sewer. It was so ferocious that our brothers suffered heavy casualties. Sheriff George's eyes were splitting with tears. "What did you say?" The other side seemed to have received some news, and there was a faint voice. After a few seconds, the voice became more anxious. "Latest news, the green-skinned monster has rushed into the Osborn building. Went on a killing spree, killing and injuring dozens of people. People in the building have been evacuated and Osborn Enterprises is urgently requesting police help." After listening to the report, Sheriff George looked solemn. Turning his head in the direction of Spider-Man, "That green-skinned monster is the Professor Lizard you mentioned, transformed by Dr. Connors of Osborn Enterprises." Parker heard the conversation clearly from the sidelines. Angry and anxious. He nodded repeatedly. "Chief, I have to rush there immediately. If Professor Lizard gets the canary device, things will get out of hand and everyone in New York will be unlucky." Sheriff George looked at his anxious look and said, "It's not a lie. In addition, the most urgent thing at this time is to arrest or kill Professor Lizard. Compared with this, Spider-Man's matter is not worth mentioning." Therefore, he just hesitated for a moment, nodded and said, "I didn't see you today, please go." Upon hearing this, Parker shot out the spider silk and rose into the sky without saying anything else. After talking about Fang Tian too much, the only good thing about this matter is that Spider-Man's leg was not shot by the police this time and he still moved quickly. At this time, Fang Tian also rushed to the location of the Osborn building. After pampering Professor Lizard for so long, it's time to reap the rewards. Why wouldn't he go? On the way, Fang Tian called Gwen. Now, among the people Fang Tian cares about in this world, Gwen is one of them. After the call was connected, without waiting for Gwen to ask, Fang Tian said directly, "Gwen, where are you now?" Gwen was a little confused. "What happened?" "After I separated from you, I went home. Now right at home. Can I help you with anything?" He looked at the people coming and going around him. Thinking about the human tragedy that might happen later, Fang Tian felt no fluctuation in his heart. He just said to Gwen, "Yes, I have something very important to ask you for help. Can you promise me first?" Gwen said, "What?" I agreed. "Don't worry, leave the matter to me. I will definitely done." Fang Tian said, "You and your family will stay at home all day today, close the doors and windows, and seal the gaps in the room with tape. It would be better if you can get a gas mask. Bring it, put on a gas mask and don't go out." Hearing Fang Tian's solemn tone, Gwen had a bad feeling in her heart, but she knew that she might not be able to help in this matter, so it was best not to hold Fang Tian back. Helped. So she agreed directly. After solving Gwen's matter, Fang Tian no longer had any worries. He randomly found a mask and attached it to his face, and rushed towards the direction of Osborn Tower at full speed. Spider-Man ultimately arrived too late. Just as he climbed to the roof of the Osborn Tower, Professor Lizard had loaded the potion into the canary device. Seeing Spider-Man climb up the stairs, he laughed wildly. "Parker, you can't stop me this time." As he spoke, he had already pressed the launch button of the canary device. I saw the lizard medicine in Canary's equipment spinning rapidly and being launched high into the sky. With a muffled sound, the medicine in the sky exploded, forming billowing green clouds. The green cloud spread to the surroundings, and as it spread, the medicinal mist gradually dispersed. Pedestrians on the roadside looked up at the green mist floating down from the sky and stretched out their hands to touch it curiously. Something terrible happened. With a tooth-piercing sizzling sound, green scales spread from the fingers and covered the man's body. The man rolled on the ground in fear, but calmed down after the scales covered his body. When he opened his eyes, what appeared was a lizard-like vertical spear. He caressed his scaly body in fascination and howled. At this time, he was not the only one who had changed. But hundreds, thousands of people. Within sight, all exposed pedestrians turned into humanoid lizards. On the roof of the Osborne building, Professor Lizard laughed. "Look, poor Parker, these are all my companions. Now, they are all equal. How perfect is this? Have you experienced it?" Spider-Man looked around. There was also some confusion around him. Unexpectedly, things eventually developed to this point. Now, how to solve this matter? Before he had time to think about it, Professor Lizard had already rushed over. Parker had no choice but to fight back and started fighting back and forth with Professor Lizard. At this point, Spider-Man is intact and can fully demonstrate his strength. But even so, he gradually fell into a disadvantage, and only relied on his extraordinary reach to deal with Professor Lizard. Although Parker's fist was heavy, Professor Lizard's fist was even harder. The force of 10 to 20 tons hit the professor, which only caused him to scream in pain and did not cause much damage. Spider silk can only bring some harassment to the professor. Spider-Man doesn't have any powerful moves, and if you think about it, things will get worse and worse. Thinking about the news that Director George got on the walkie-talkie, Professor Lizard had massacred dozens of people, and the surrounding scenes made Parker make up his mind. He wants to teach the professor a bloody lesson. Not to mention Spider-Man's determination, Fang Tian had already arrived at the Osborne Tower. But he was not in a hurry to go up and confront Professor Lizard. Fang Tian allowed Professor Lizard to act. In addition to wanting him to successfully launch the potion and refine more lizards, he also had another purpose. That was the raid on Osborne House. Osborne Tower has a lot of good stuff. The main components of the spider web launcher used by Spider-Man are produced by Osborne Enterprises, and there should be a lot of them stored here. In addition to the super spider that mutates Parker, the rhino mecha that will appear in the future, and the unknown green goblin suit, these are all things that Fang Tian drools over. Osborne Enterprises is also considered a giant. In a capitalist society like the United States, its influence is very huge. Haven't you seen the steel armor in Iron Man's hand? This is what the government covets, but it still can't get it. This is a reflection of the huge influence of Stark Industries. If this thing were in the hands of an ordinary person, the government would have taken it by force. Fang Tian still has to live in the United States. Normally, it would be hard to offend such a capital giant, but now, in chaos, who can care about him? Spider-Man fights on the rooftop. Fang Tian had great fun searching the building. Is this a spider silk launcher? A piece of something the size of a fingernail can eject hundreds of meters of tough spider silk. It is indeed a good thing. Take it. The space in the body is scrolling, and the spider silk launcher placed in the storage room has disappeared. A few minutes later, Fang Tian appeared again in the room where super spiders were cultivated. Looking at the dense spiders crawling on the spider silk, Fang Tian also trembled slightly. With a wave of his hand, the spiders disappeared out of thin air. After a while, in the room already empty. Feeling the increased skill, Fang Tian couldn't help but smile on his face. Since he was promoted to the second level of low grade, which is a low-grade magic weapon, he has refined dozens of people from the Hell Gang, plus an unknown level. Mutant Pulse. He had a battle with Professor Lizard. During the battle, he deliberately sought a beating and refused to dodge the professor's attacks. In the end, he even pulled out more than a dozen of the professor's tails and refined them. Plus today's harvest, during his actions, he had been promoted to the middle-grade magic weapon silently. According to Fang Tian's induction, after being promoted to the middle-grade magic weapon, not only the defense, strength, and speed have improved, but now his body can accommodate the second rune. In other words, he can have one more special ability. But there is no rush to choose now, let's wait until today's battle is over. After harvesting the spider silk launcher and super spider, Tien started searching again. After a long while, he finally found the rhino mecha. Unfortunately, the powerful rhino mecha was only a semi-finished product at this time, and it was obviously not fully developed. Fang Tian didn't dislike it and swallowed it in one gulp. The effect? Yes, it gave him another dozen more skills. Before leaving, Fang Tian saw the X-ray camera introduced by Professor Connors when he visited the laboratory. It is said that it is the only one in the world. Simply, there was a lot of trouble coming to the laboratory. The legendary X-ray camera, which is the only one in the world, did not miss it. Looking at the empty laboratory, he smiled with satisfaction. Then he turned and headed to the roof. On the roof of the building, Parker made up his mind to teach Professor Lizard a profound lesson. Spider-Man does not seem to have any lethal skills, but in fact, this is just a misunderstanding. Among his abilities, there is an inconspicuous but very practical ability, is electrostatic adsorption. Electrostatic adsorption can allow Spider-Man to adsorb to various materials, which is the basis for his flying over walls. Few people know that this ability can also be used in combat. The two sides are still in a stalemate. During the battle, Parker came and went. Finally, the opportunity came. When the professor stepped on the exhaust fan of the central air conditioner on the roof and was standing unsteadily, Spider-Man shot out his webbing and leapt behind the professor. He punched his scaled back with both fists. Logically speaking, these two punches would make the professor stagger at most, but this time it was different. Parker's fist seemed to be stuck on the professor's back. With both legs strong, he bent his knees and kicked him up. There was a stabbing sound, and 2 feet of scales spread out. And a large piece of flesh and blood was torn off. Even though the professor had a huge body, it was uncomfortable to receive this blow. There was a bloody patch on his back, and there was no good piece of flesh in sight. Blood spilled out from the torn muscle like a fountain. The professor looked up to the sky and howled in pain. It was difficult to recover from a tear-shaped wound, let alone such a large one. With the professor's recovery power, his eyesight turned black and he almost fell to the ground. It is precisely because this move is so cruel that Spider-Man rarely uses it. This was a great opportunity, but Spider-Man did not take the opportunity to attack. He knew that the lizard in front of him was Dr. Connors, but he still missed the old relationship and tried to awaken the professor's consciousness. Professor, wake up, this is not your intention. Don't you have great ideals? Look around you, what have you caused? I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.